Welcome, everybody. So glad to be with you here tonight. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. It's going to be a great conversation. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Let's do it.
The American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. It was just so glad. I'm just so glad. I can't tell you how glad I am to be here with all of you tonight. Got a lot to talk about tonight. A lot of things that we'll be discussing tonight for a variety of reasons that'll be made clear pretty soon. But yeah, so hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Make sure that you crush the subscribe button. Make sure you crush the notifications bell. You may want to try unsubscribing and then resubscribing because they are messing with us unbelievably. YouTube algorithms are not being kind to us right now. I'll just tell you that much. And weird things are happening. And that's why we're now on Rumble. That's why we're now on Rockfin. And that's what we're going to do. So, quick rundown for those of you who may not be familiar with things, the way we do things here. I give my opening remarks. My opening remarks are then followed by a roll call. And then after that, I just answer people's questions for the rest of the night. So if you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of the program, send me a super chat question on YouTube. Send me a Rumble rant question on Rumble, or send me a Rockfin tip question on Rockfin. Those are the three platforms we are now streaming on. All of them enable you to send questions. So yeah, that's the way it works. Couple announcements before we get going into this. Just a couple quick announcements. First announcement that I would like to share with all of you. Every morning we have our morning message from the Center for Political Innovation. One of our members records the message. Members or friends or allies record the message, a morning message to help us all start our day with revolutionary hope and optimism. And we have those every single day on the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel, every single day. Well, today our guest message was a very special guest message from none other than Nick Brana, the chairman, the leader of the People's Party. He recorded the guest message today, and that was just really awesome. That was a great surprise for everybody. We're going to play his message later today on this broadcast. But, that's why you need to go subscribe. And every single day, we have a morning message from the Center for Political Innovation. Every single day. Today, it was from Nick Brana. We're going to play it later on the show. Probably in the second half, we'll play it. So I wanted folks to be aware of that. Also, quick announcement that we're about to release Peter Coffin's next documentary, which is about the recent CPI event. The CPI event we had in New York City, July 10th, focused on the prison system, mass incarceration. We called it Money in American Injustice, how the U.S. legal system targets the poor. We're about to release our full-length film. Well, not full length. It's about a half-hour documentary film about that event, about the Uhuru movement, what's going on with them, about, the suppression of civil liberties and the police state and communism and Stalin and all kinds of things. And it's about to be released. So keep your eye out for that. That is going to be great. That is going to be awesome. Also, we are going to be announcing shortly the date of our Portland conference that the Center for Political Innovation is holding. We're having a meeting on Saturday. Our general membership meeting will be taking place tomorrow. And after that, shortly afterwards, we will be announcing the date of our Portland conference, which it looks like will be our national conference, because we're doing it a little bit later than we thought we were going to do, but we're setting a date. We are setting a date tomorrow, and we're going to mobilize for months to build that event. And that will be our national conference for the Center for Political Innovation. So the date and themes of the conference are to be announced shortly. Hold your horses, right? But very shortly, we will be announcing the date of our national conference that will be held in Portland, Oregon. Very exciting, very, very exciting indeed. It's going to be great. And you should really try to be there because you're going to have plenty of time. We're not having it tomorrow. We're not having it a week from today or even a month from today. We're having it a little further in the future, it looks like. But you should plan to be there, really. If you're part of this community, it's going to be a very special event. We had our recent event in New York City, July 10th. That was great. We had our conference in March, the Summit Against Hypocrisy. That was great. But this is going to be on a completely different level. We are going to do something really, really special in Portland, Oregon. And we are going to build it like crazy ahead of time. We are going to make sure that a lot of people come to that event and learn what we're all about. And it's going to be very dynamic. There's going to be some special guests there. We've got a lot of exciting plans. So hold tight for the announcement about the Center for Political Innovation's national convention that is coming up. And it will be located in Portland, Oregon. The next thing to mention, next week, I will be releasing a new book that I am publishing about an important figure in American communism. And I'll be exposing some information about this person and who they have been beholden to and manipulated by in the past. And I'm sure it will generate a wave of controversy. It'll probably make a lot of people very angry with me. But then again, a lot of people are already very angry with me. So this new book is might surprise some people, but it has some information about what this person's been up to and who this person has been working for the last little bit. And I don't want to say too much more about it, but it'll be out in a couple days. So keep your eyes out for that, right? Probably early next week. You will have this book will be available. I'm going to be doing some interviews about it. Some interviews about it are already lined up. And this book is not what anyone will expect it to be. Not a hit piece on this person by any means. I give them the credit that they deserve. But I also reveal some things about this person and who they've been working for that may not be obvious and are going to make a lot of people mad. And it's going to be unique. Let me just put it that way. This new book that is coming out is going to be unique. Now, it looks like next week I'll also be chatting with Angela McGirdle, who is the leader, the chair of the Libertarian Party of the United States. She lives in Austin, Texas, and she is the chair of the Libertarian Party. And it looks like next Thursday, the 24th, her and I will be having a public conversation, and it'll be streaming on this channel as well as on a couple different libertarian channels. And we're just going to have a conversation about communism and libertarianism and where there might be common ground in stopping the wars. That's going to be very exciting. So a lot of really, really exciting things are happening on this channel and in the Center for Political Innovation community. A lot of really exciting things are happening, and a lot of really exciting things have happened this year. So with that in mind, everybody, like I said before, please, if you have something you want me to talk about or a question you'd like me to answer in the second half of our program tonight, send a super chat on YouTube, send a Rockfin tip on the Rockfin, or send a Rumble rant on Rumble. And we will address that in the second half of our show. I'll be writing them down. That's the way we do things here on this channel. And so with no further ado, I'm going to go right into my opening remarks. for tonight. Folks, I have always liked a particular piece of music. I shouldn't say I've always liked it, right? We use words like always. I haven't always been in existence, right? I was born in 1987, but before that, I wasn't born yet. And I've liked this piece of music, I should correctly say, since I was in college. And the way I discovered this piece of music was that I had a roommate in college who was a music compositionist. He was studying music composition, and he was very much into classical music, and I was not. And he asked me why I did not like classical music. And I told him that I thought classical music was boring. I said, it's boring. And in my experience, I remembered classical music from when I was a kid, and I had a radio in my bedroom. It was a really big deal in my household that I had a radio in my bedroom, a clock radio. It was my alarm clock to get up for school in the morning. And I put it on at night as I was going to sleep. And my parents were adamant that that clock radio never stay anywhere but tuned to 89.7 WKSU public radio. My parents were adamant I could not listen to anything but public radio. And so when it was time for me to go to sleep, I turned on my clock radio, and they had their classical music show that started at like 8 in the afternoon and went until midnight. And every night during the week, I went to sleep with classical music. Then Friday and Saturday and Sunday, they would have folk music. And so I would listen to folk music when I was going to sleep on. And so I associated classical music with going to sleep. Just going to sleep on a school night, right? When I was a kid, I would go to sleep on a school night. I would turn on my clock radio, and they would have 89.7 WKSU, the National Public Radio, the NPR station in Kent, Ohio, near Kent State University. And that's what I would go to sleep with. So I associated classical music with going to sleep. That's what I associated it with. I thought it was dull, boring, whatever. Well, my roommate, he loved classical music. He was a musician. He was in the Conservatory of Music at the college I was studying at. And when he heard me say that classical music was boring, he took great exception to that and insisted that classical music was not boring. And he insisted that it wasn't boring. And the reason that he gave that classical music was not boring is he said anything by Richard Wagner, the German composer, that man, you can criticize his music all you want, but Wagner's music was not boring. And I listened to it, and he was right. And that was my gateway drug, you could say, to classical music. And I came to love this particular piece of music as I started listening to Wagner's music. This is called the Siegfried Funeral March. And it, to this day, is one of my favorite pieces of music. All of the friends who watch this, who are part of the LaRouche movement, are cringing right now. They loathe Wagner. I don't care. I like Wagner. And, this is from the opera Götterdämmerung, which my wife and I went to see a couple years back at the Met. And there are a few pieces of music that move me as much as the Siegfried Funeral March. Let's go. There you go. That was the Siegfried Funeral March from the Wagner opera Götterdämmerung. It's the twilight of the gods. Siegfried, the hero, is stabbed in the back, killed by someone he thought to be his friend. And then Brunhild, his lover, mourns his loss and gathers everyone at the funeral pyre and mounts his horse and rides her horse into the flames of the funeral pyre. Then the flames of the funeral pyre spread across the entire world, and all the world burns to pieces, and all that is left is the Rhine River. That is how the Wagner ring cycle ends. After the funeral march, you have the infamous or famous Brunhild immolation scene where the whole world bursts into flames. And the opera is called Götterdämmerung, the twilight of the gods, Armageddon, Armageddon, the end times, the end of the world in German. Well, the reason that I decided to start tonight's broadcast with that particular piece is because that particular piece kind of incarnates, in a way, the power of revolutionary immortality and martyrdom. There's a particularly, there's a motive. I don't know what you call it. I don't know. I don't know my musical terminology enough. But at one point, I don't know what to call it. At one point, there is a line in the a part of the piece that's very powerful. And the reason it's powerful is this, right? The music goes bum, 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 bum. Now, why is that powerful? Because the way your mind works, this is fascinating to me. The way your mind works when you hear bum, bum, and then bum, bum, you assume it went up by this much, and then it went up by this much. You assume it's going to continue going up at the same trajectory that it continues to go up. But then it shoots forward, and the tempo speeds up, and the pitch goes higher, and it's bum, 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 bum. And it fakes you out, so to speak. It surprises you. And the whole piece is supposed to symbolize that Siegfried has been killed, but he is immortalized, that the hero is slain, the hero is dead, but he has achieved immortality. And I thought that was an appropriate piece to start tonight's stream with, because today is August 18th, 2023. And in less than 2 hours, in about an hour and a half, an hour and 34 minutes, it will be August 19th, 2023. August 19th, a year ago tomorrow, was supposed to be the end of everything that we do on this channel. On August 19th, a vicious attack on all of us watching right now, on our entire community, was launched. And that was supposed to be the end of us. And it was a loaded, vicious attack that was unleashed on our community. They attacked us on about 25 different levels. They leaped on us with the intention of destroying us. And it was vicious. It was a vicious attack. And we're still here. We're still here. We retreated temporarily, we regrouped, and now we're stronger than we ever were before. We have accomplished more in the past year than we did in the previous 3 years combined. But August 19th of last year, they launched their vicious, vicious attack on us with the intention of completely wiping out the Center for Political Innovation. They unloaded their artillery on us with everything they had. And now they're sitting there going, oh shit, we ran out of bullets. And they have run out of bullets because now they've got nothing else. The attacks they threw at us, they can only throw those attacks once. They can only throw those attacks once. They dropped all of the heaviest bombs on us at one time. At one time, they dropped the Me Too bomb on us. They dropped the cult bomb on us. They dropped every bomb they had. The biggest bombs they have, they dropped on us. The cult awareness, cult brainwashing, cult thing, the Me Too thing, they unloaded it all on us. They just unloaded it all. They just unloaded it all. They had people in the organization that were plants that were there to... They're, anticipating the attack to wreck the group, to use the attack to wreck the group from within, to pretend to be sympathetic, but then use the attack to wreck the group. They used the infiltration bomb. They used every bomb they had on us. They unloaded their nuclear arsenal on us. They hit us with everything they had. And here we are. And now they've run out of ammunition because they can never play those cards again. All of the people that were either sent in to do damage or were too weak to withstand the attack are gone. Anybody who cared about my private life and what I do with consenting adults is gone. And anybody who was worried that, oh my God, this is a cult, I'm going to be brainwashed, is gone. And now our organization is stronger. We have pulled off so much in the past year because of the fact that we have been purged, and because of the fact that our enemies can no longer drop these bombs on us again. They've already been dropped. We've already withstood that. Folks, we have more funding than we had before to carry out our activities. We have more dedicated members than we had before in order to get done what we need to get done. We have done so much in the past year, and we have done it because of the attack that we faced and because we withstood it. By attacking us, they made us stronger and more effective. They cut us loose from so-called allies who were holding us back and were not really our friends. They gave us access to people that were genuine, trustworthy allies who want to help us get real things done. This past year has been a year of recovery. But more than that, it has been a year of resurgence, of dramatic resurgence. And I know that every single one of you watching this right now, every single one of you, is here because you get it. The people who are just along for the ride, the people who didn't quite get it, the people who were with us until it got tough. And here we are. There's that old story that Lenin used to tell. It was Lenin's favorite anecdote. I don't know if people are familiar with it. I see someone in the chat referenced it, so I'll tell the anecdote. Lenin loved this story, and apparently it came from a Maxim Gorky novel. Maxim Gorky was a Russian Marxist novelist, and he apparently included this story in one of his essays or books or something like that. And Lenin loved it, and he used it in many articles and speeches. But the story goes that there were two men walking through the countryside in Russia. They're just walking through the countryside. There's fields around them, forests, and they see a hill in the distance. And on the hill, they saw an old man. And this old man was waving his arms around crazy. You know, and they thought this man must be having an epileptic fit. This is crazy. They got closer. The man just moving his arms wildly around. They thought this man must be having a seizure. This man must be, rabid. He maybe has rabies. I mean, or maybe he's just insane. But there's this crazy man on a hill moving his arms around and jumping around. Looks completely crazy. But they got closer to the hill. And as they got closer to the hill, they discovered that that man was not crazy. That man did not have rabies. That man was not having an epileptic fit. The man was sharpening a knife. He had a stone and he was sharpening the knife. From a distance, it looked erratic. From a distance, it looked unpredictable and crazed, but it was actually Very calculated activity. What the man was doing was he was trying to sharpen the blade of his knife. So he was trying to strike the blade of the knife against the stone as hard as he possibly could in order to sharpen the knife. And so he had to move his arms this way and jerk it and from a different angle. Sharpening a knife from a distance looks erratic and crazy, but in reality, it was a very calculated, effective thing the man was doing. He was sharpening his knife. Sharpening the blade for what was to come. And that is what the Center for Political Innovation has been doing for the past year, for the past 2 years. We have been sharpening our knives, sharpening our blades for the fight ahead, sharpening our blades for the coming fight. Yeah. And you know that they're utterly terrified of us. Thank you very much. You know that they're utterly terrified of us because they continue to pretend that we don't exist. Mark Twain, the American satirical writer, he used to say, "Rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated." And rumors of the death of the Center for Political Innovation continue to exist. I continue to see people announcing that the CPI is dissolved. The CPI doesn't exist. The Kiev Post, an official Ukrainian newspaper, said that the CPI disappeared, completely disappeared. Well, no, we didn't. It also said that the CPI was a split from the Communist Party, which we are not. We've had dual membership before, but we have nothing to do with the Communist Party. We're our own organization. I've never been a member of the Communist Party. In addition to that, it said that our conference in Chicago was our opening event, which it absolutely was not. We'd been doing stuff for years before that, a couple of years at least. I claimed that Jackson Hinkle attended our event in Chicago. No, he did not. I claimed that Max Blumenthal attended our event in Chicago. No, he did not. It claimed that I'm friends with Marine Le Pen, which is interesting. I have never met Marine Le Pen, never been to France, but it claimed that I'm friends with Marine Le Pen. What else did the article claim? The Kiev Post, this hit piece that they ran on Tara Reid. That hit piece was amazing. I mean, I'm apparently hanging out with Marine Le Pen, Jackson Hinkle, and Max Blumenthal were at our Chicago conference, apparently. It got a lot of shit wrong. Let me just put it that way. That our flag ceremony was our closing ceremony. No, that would be our opening ceremony. That we took the videos down of our flag ceremony because we're embarrassed of it somehow. Wrong. No, we've done them over and over and over again. The first time we did the flag ceremony was in Austin, and then we did it again in Chicago, and then we did it again in March at the March conference, and then we did that again in July. We love our flag ceremony. We're not embarrassed. We haven't taken it down. We haven't hidden anything. We love our flag ceremony. We love our organization. We love our chants and our slogans. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Out of the movement to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We are stronger than ever. And rather than continue to mock us, rather than continue to lie about us, now they just want to continue to tell people that we don't exist. And I continue to see people on social media saying that CPI disappeared. CPI doesn't exist. Oh, so the CPI is no longer around. Oh, no, it doesn't exist. On what planet? On what planet? On February 19th, we were official sponsors of the Rage Against the War Machine rally. And you'll notice that many of the people that still claim the CPI doesn't exist were attacking the Rage Against the War Machine rally for the fact that our symbol was on all of the posters, all of the events announcing it. Our logo and the word Center for Political Innovation was on every single one of the announcements. So how can we be dissolved if we're sponsoring huge rallies in Washington, D.C.? We sponsored a rally where who spoke? Tulsi Gabbard. Who spoke? Who spoke? Many people spoke. We sponsored that rally. The Libertarian Party sponsored it. The People's Party sponsored it. We also sponsored it. CPI. Who also attended the rally? Chris Hedges, Max Blumenthal, Anya Parampil, all kinds of people spoke at that rally. And supposedly, if we don't exist, how did we sponsor it? And then not only did we sponsor the event, mind you, we did sponsor the event, but then after the event, we had a reception. We had a reception after the event. We had a reception after the event. It was a pretty great reception. And I will put the video on the screen of what happened at our reception. This is how our reception after the Rage Against the War Machine rally opened. Ideas are great, but the reason that the Center for Political Innovation exists is to put on events like this, to give a platform to ideas we don't widely hear in the United States, to educate people about anti-imperialism and socialism. And that is why it is really an honor tonight to bring forward our guest of honor, a real hero, someone who deserves to be heard from the heavens. Everyone should hear what this man has to say. Scott Ritter is here. Scott Ritter is here. We are proud that Scott Ritter is here. This is a hero. This is a hero right here. We love you, Scott. We love you. Go ahead and give us some words. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. To be honest, I thought I was just coming here to a reception to say hi to people, and speaking is, hopefully it's a bonus. Listening, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, Caleb. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I want to thank everybody here for coming out. I know some people traveled a long way to come to this rally.
Yes, that's not a dead organization. That room was packed full of people cheering for Scott Ritter, on their feet for Scott Ritter. And in addition to that, we then had the Summit Against Hypocrisy, a 2-day national conference in Washington, D.C. to oppose the so-called Democracy Summit called by Joe Biden. And the great Peter Coffin was involved in that summit, and he made a documentary of that summit. And I'm going to show you just a little bit of that documentary now. You should watch the whole documentary if you get a chance. I'm going to show you some of it. Let's see how much if they let me upload it into the program, or if I need to. Yeah, we're going to watch just a little bit of Peter Coffin's documentary.
This left, Caleb, and
I'm saying
CPI. Here we go.
This isn't working.
do we have another?
Cord?
Just one of these types of clips, because I feel like.
Oh, actually, I don't know if I have another one of those.
I don't know. I help move crap around and basically put in some manual labor with everybody else. I had my spinach.
I participated in the setting up mostly, more than I did the organizing of the Summit Against Hypocrisy. And the day prior to the event, myself, Caleb Maupin, and our president, Elizabeth Young, went to a storage unit, got lots of the stuff we needed out of storage, including lots of flags that once we got back to the house, I was ironing. 7, 8 flags, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
They made it, right?
Yeah. So where are they? Did you leave Stalin out at the house? What? We're bringing them out at like a glorious moment. Like they're hidden at the beginning. So someone has to go back and get Stalin them out.
I will go get them.
No more Stalin. We gotta get it.
All right. Stop Stalin and go get them out. Anyway.
It was go. I woke up, ate breakfast, got in the car with Peter and some other comrades, and got cameras and equipment, supplies and whatnot.
You know, we put a lot of work into staging the conferences.
El pueblo unido jamás.
Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated.
What's the last part go?
Jamás.
Unloaded the car, I put up the banners, spread the books out. So I'm a school teacher with $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in student debt. I really don't know. I try not to think about it that much, but it's a lot. So I had to buy a $500 plane ticket on a $2,000 a month paycheck. Luckily, the hotel had a continental breakfast. That helped out. But yeah, I'm broke till the next payday. But I wanted to be there. It meant a lot to me to be there.
I'm now thinking of eating fried rice.
Free food gang represent is all I'm saying.
But I did also eat a bunch of Danishes like a minute ago, so that wouldn't be. A, aftertaste, and B, I would get fat very.
There's a very simple principle that people from a working class background understand, and it is that when there's free food, you eat it. And especially if you're spending all morning moving a bunch of heavy crap around, big bins of water bottles, crates of books. Yeah, you gotta eat. And our convention was a paying customer of the hotel. Amazing Danishes there.
Our political opponents, people in the ruling class, the class enemy, spends a long time staging propaganda for imperialism, staging events to stir people up, to support war. You look at the Democrat convention, the Republican convention. So it's necessary for those of us who are serious about building a socialist community to work hard to make our events well staged and well put together, practicing the opening ceremony, making sure that everything goes the way it should go. We put a lot of work into that, and I think that's important. And, you know, you have to practice things.
So after Jetta, when Garland is done speaking, Jetta will then call Peter up to the podium, and even if it's not 3:00 yet, we'll go right into the next one, second panel. After that second panel is over, Peter's going to call me up, and I'm going to invite people to do our White House thing. The other thing is we really want to get this room looking as clean as we possibly can. The next thing we got to do is that when the sound is set up, we'll practice the opening ceremony then. Great. I think we're good to go.
You hear these words, human rights and democracy, and you just think, good, that has to be good, freedom, liberty, human rights, democracy. And so putting the title in there and with that spin, Summit Against Hypocrisy, it's calls their bluff right there. It's right in the title. The intention is to draw the attention of the public to the fact that these words that they feel good about, that they're supposed to care about and be invested in, are being used maliciously. They're being used coercively. And to me, that's a trick that's being played on people.
All right, let's do this. All right.
Okay.
Shall we? Okay. We know you through different names. Some of us know you through the Talmud and the Torah. Some of us know you through Jesus and the Bible. Some of us know you through the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad. Some of us know you only through the beautiful, ever-changing world you've created. God, we just want to do our part, our little part, in opposing all the injustice and evil and standing for truth. And speaking to people in a way that they can hear it. Getting people to open their hearts and open their minds to understand that something better is possible. Oh God, we just ask that you join us today. Help us. Speak through us. Let us do something beautiful today. Let us do something powerful today. Let this be a day people remember for the rest of their lives, God.
CPI represents the only alternative to what we're hearing from the burn it down, tear it down synthetic left.
fear is a part of our tactics.
A lot of people think that we're like burning our city down and we're rioting and destroying everything. I mean, I think there's some level of truth to that.
No one else is saying that you can actually be patriotic in that you love this country and you love the people, but you despise the people who are running it. We want to build a better America. The working class is not interested in tear it down, burn it down. We want good jobs, stable lives. The people that we're looking for, they're not going to be found among the people who classify themselves as leftists now. They're going to be found among working class Americans who love their country.
And we're not about jamming our morals and ideals down anybody's throat. We're about reaching people and attempting to spread knowledge. And that means you're going to disagree with some people at some times. That said, no one is less of a person because they think something different about how the economy is going to be run, or because they don't understand a cultural issue, or because they don't like the way they feel like they're being pressured to act within society. Yeah, it's certainly possible for that stuff to be messed up, but if our assumption is just that everybody's like evil,
a fascist is a fascist,
we're not going to get anywhere. And if you've got that in mind, it should be obvious why we would have somebody like Scott Ritter to speak. Like, he's got this cool idea, I forget what it's called. Oh yeah, not having a nuclear war.
I am the epitome of a Reagan Republican. I grew up child of a Cold War. My dad was career military, and the first president I voted for was Ronald Reagan. I believed in war. I wanted war. I worshiped war because war was my salvation. Salvation from you, you communist-loving socialists. All jokes aside, though, it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here for the very reasons I just said, because while we may not be cut from the same piece of cloth, we do seek to be sewn into the common clothing of a nation that needs to be shielded from the nakedness of its imperial ambition. Yeah. Well, let's call it the American standard, the new American standard. Yeah. Sitting down and talking.
Imperial capitalism is bloated to the point where those worldwide conflicts become necessary in order to hold things together. And the only way we're going to beat it is by understanding that everybody has a say. Everybody is worth talking to and working with on at least some level.
The paradigm that many people operate under, that I had before operated under, was, a very simplified view of the world and the types of things that we're giving people information about. These aren't easy things to settle with. They're things that unsettle you, things that change your paradigm and your view of the world. So, I really liked Garland's style of relating to people and the way that he inserts those little brainworms for people. He used that analogy of the bike shorts.
To me, the brain is kind of like a pair of biker shorts. A pair of biker shorts, they're kind of tight, they fit real tight, right? And if you start gaining a few pounds and they stretch and stretch and stretch, and after a while, if they stretch but so big, even if you lose the weight, the biker shorts will never come back to where they were before. And if you give people certain pieces of information, no matter how hard they try, they can't lose those pieces of information.
I think that analogy sits perfectly.
He talked a lot about the stuff that I generally talk about that's really important to me.
How to talk to people who have opposing views.
I don't think you convince anyone by arguing with them.
Other people don't change our mind, we change our own mind. And in an online first world where we're constantly being bombarded with the attack impulse of be it in your face, be confrontational, I feel like that's a very good reminder to have.
What I was talking about is having the confidence and patience to say to people, here's a contradiction. Boom, boom. Look at that. That's a bunch of foolishness. Okay. And walk away and leave. Because sooner or later, if you are right, if you really believe you're right, reality is going to teach them.
My favorite speaker was Jody Brar. She's the leader of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist. It was very inspirational, especially when she spoke about feeling helpless as a parent under monopoly capitalism, under imperialism, under this system.
You're looking at an impotent parent right here, right? Watching teenage children go through all of this, but utterly powerless to help them. Because they're not old enough yet to know that I actually understand what they're going through and that I understand the world that they live in. I'm mum. So I know nothing. And they're in a world that doesn't give them what they need, and I can't give it to them either. Because what they need is social.
There's a lot of things that don't make sense, like how college admission is being done here in the US and the tuition that they impose on the kids and even getting a job afterwards. There's a lot of pressure on the young people.
We have the chance to ensure that the criminal provocation of a third world war by our profit-hungry rulers leads to a fresh revolutionary wave, and to ensure also that this time we are able to see it through to the finish.
Jyoti has such a breadth of knowledge. To just be able to talk about Marxism for 2.5 hours, coherently, brilliant speaker.
Jyoti Brar from the British Communist Party, she's absolutely brilliant. Would I miss this event in person? No way.
I really love Dr. Wilmer's speech. He is also someone very inspirational, very intelligent, always interesting to listen to.
If the promotion of democracy is at the top of the Biden administration's list, why is he, Joe Biden, still pursuing the Trump administration's persecution and extradition of Julian Assange? If promotion of democracy is still truly at the top of the Biden agenda, why is diplomat Alex Saab still in a prison in Florida? Democracies will continue to deliver for their people if the United States gets out of the way. Thank you.
I wanted to lay. So anyway, that is the great film, the great documentary film about our summit against hypocrisy that was made by Peter Coffin. You can watch the whole film, here. It's on the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel. You can watch it here. It's really, really great. It's really, really, really great. Watch the whole film. You can watch it right here. You can watch it. I really recommend you do. And in just a few days, Peter Coffin is going to have released yet another Center for Political Innovation film. This one themed around our event that we did in July. So that's really, really tremendous. Peter Coffin is extremely skilled as a filmmaker. So it's going to be very, very exciting. But I want to just continue our conversation here, right? Because not many people have been through what I and our organization went through a year ago. I mean, we faced attack from many different angles. We faced betrayal, backstabbing from many different angles. But we endured and we got through it. And now we stand stronger. And I've got to tell you, as much as it may seem otherwise, this is what every great revolutionary movement has experienced. I've told the story many times about how there was once something called the Chinese Soviet Republic. 1931, the communists in China had carved out so much territory they declared their own government, the Chinese Soviet Republic. But Chiang Kai-shek got military support from Germany, and the Chinese Soviet Republic was crushed. And Mao retreated into the mountains. And then there was a group, I think it was called the 28 Bolsheviks, a group that had been trained in Moscow, who were sent back from the Soviet Union to depose Mao as the leader. They said Mao was incompetent, that it was Mao's fault that they'd been crushed, that the Chinese Soviet Republic had been crushed. So after Mao retreated into the mountains, he then faced an uprising within his own ranks of people aligned with the Soviet Union, claiming the backing of the Soviet Union, who tried to remove Mao from the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party and the Red Army. And so not only was Mao facing an attack from the Chinese Soviet, from the Chinese nationalist KMT, he was facing an internal contradiction as well. And that retreat that Mao made after the Chinese Soviet Republic was crushed, as they retreated up into the mountains, that retreat that they took, that became known as the Long March. I don't know if you ever heard of the Long March. But the Long March, that was when the Chinese communists retreated into the mountains. They lost control of the territory that they had liberated. They lost their provisional government, and they retreated up into the mountains. And people thought that was the end of Chinese communism. But every village they went to was the same story. Because many of these mountain villages in China barely had any contact with civilization. And whenever an army showed up, that army would come to loot them and rob them. And that's actually one of the great things in I think I've got it. I got it over here in the little red book. Right? Go and read the rules, the military rules, right? These military rules that are in the little red book are they're quite revolutionary if you read them, right? The 8 rules, the 8 rules of discipline, right? The 3 main rules of discipline and the 8 points of attention. They're in the little red book. Right? The 3 rules of discipline and the 8 points of attention. Right? Obey orders in all your actions. Do not take a single needle or piece of thread from the masses and turn in everything captured. The 8 points of attention are: speak politely, pay fairly for what you buy, return everything you borrow, pay for anything you damage, do not hit or swear at people, do not damage crops, do not take liberties with women, and do not ill-treat captives. Those were the rules for the Red Army, right? The three main rules of discipline and the 8 points of attention. And those rules made the Red Army operate very differently than any of the armies that had previously, you're on the list, that had previously visited these remote rural villages in China. And when the Red Army would show up at a village, the villagers would panic and they'd think, here's another group of soldiers that's going to steal all our crops and rape all the women. And the Red Army would show up and they would pay for every single thing. Every single thing that they took, they didn't take without paying for it. They returned everything they borrowed. They spoke politely. And that was something that these villagers had never seen. Never had there been an army that operated the way the Red Army did. When the People's Liberation Army showed up, it just acted differently than any other army they'd ever dealt with. And many villagers joined the Red Army. They heard what the communists had to say about how they were building a new China, about how they had this army that operated completely differently. And in this army, you had the children of peasants and the children of wealthy people from the cities and the children of landlords, all in the same army together, treating people with respect, not plundering and looting, but instead helping people, paying for everything that they took. And people from the village would join the Red Army. And then they'd go to another village, and the villagers would also be shocked by how they conducted themselves, and they would join the Red Army. They'd go to another village. Same story. And village after village, in the mountains. People encountered Mao Zedong and the Red Army, and they said, this is something different. This is something we have never seen before. What Mao is doing here with his Red Army is something completely unbelievable. It is unprecedented. This is not like the army of the emperor. This is not the army of the warlords. This is not the army of Chiang Kai-shek. This is something really, really amazing. And there were Americans who went over there. Edgar Snow, an American, he went and interviewed Mao. 1936. Agnes Smedley, the very famous American feminist, she went and embedded herself. She became friends with Cho Tae, the communist general. It was not like anything they had seen before. Mao and his Red Army were completely different than anything they had ever seen before. And pretty soon, Mao came down from the mountain, and that Red Army was 10 times bigger than it had ever been. And the reason it was bigger is because it operated differently. It operated on a different moral code. It operated on a different playbook. Because do you know what the slogan of the Chinese Communist Party is? Serve the people. Serve the people. And when that Red Army showed up, it acted differently than any other army, and it won the trust of the people. It was different. It had a different quality to it. And you know, that slogan, serve the people, that might sound corny, right? It doesn't every politician claims to be a servant of the people, but they proved it. They actually did it in the areas they showed up. They proved themselves to actually mean what they said. They won the trust of millions of people with their actions. We live in an age where they try to convince us that everyone is selfish. Everyone's a fraud. Everyone's a phony. No one really cares for anybody else. That's the ideology of our ruling class. It's called philosophical irrationalism. It's the belief that the universe is not defined by order, but rather by chaos. That there is no logical way of interpreting history or understanding the world. Philosophical irrationalism is the ideology of our ruling class, and they are trying to force it on the world right now. But we stand against it. And part of the way that the ruling class pushes its philosophical irrationalism is by inculcating people with unnecessary and unfounded and illogical fears. I've talked a lot about how there's that classic Twilight Zone episode. It's a cookbook. To serve man. The aliens have a book that says to serve man. They're doing all these nice things, but then the woman finds out it's a cookbook. Part of the way to get you to not work with anybody else, to get you isolated and alone, is to inculcate you with fear. To inculcate you with fear. To make you fear your fellow human beings, to make you fear working with other people, to make you paralyzed with fear. And that is what they are very much trying to do. That's why there's a huge amount of violence on TV. That's why there's a huge amount of efforts to trigger people, to interpret things in ways that will scare other people, that will make people uncomfortable, that will make people frightened. That's why, that's what they're trying to do. They're amping up the fear. They want us to be afraid of each other, so that we're isolated, so that we're atomized. They're trying to make us afraid. They want to make you afraid of us. And that's what the whole attack last August was about, trying to scare people, make us make people afraid. That's why it was so damn long, because they were trying to trigger people on so many different levels. They tried to trigger people about this. They just tried to trigger people on every conceivable way they possibly could. They want to manipulate your trauma. They want to manipulate your fears. They want to manipulate your phobias. They want to manipulate your anxiety. They want to gross you out. They want to make you afraid. The ruling class is very manipulative in what they do. And they carry out their operations very effectively. But I believe they will fail. And the reason that I am confident they will fail is because human beings are collective creatures in nature. And everything that human beings have ever achieved has been the result of collective human labor. Everything that human beings have ever done, we have done together. Every product in every store is the result of the combined labor of thousands and thousands of people. There is nobody in this world today who can point to something and say, I made that all by myself. Nobody. Right? You say, what about like an artisan, like a wood carver? Okay, that wood carver may have carved that piece of wood all by himself, but he's using a tool. And that tool, that knife he's carving with, that was made in a factory. And he got that piece of wood. I don't think he went out back and chopped it off of a tree. I think he bought it from a lumber yard. Everything that exists is the result of collective human labor. Human beings are coming together and making things and making the world work more effectively and more efficiently than they ever have. But yet, the value, the wealth they create is privately accumulated. And that's the contradiction of capitalism. A huge amount of collective activity, all carried out to serve individual aims. And that is the contradiction of the capitalist system. And that's what leads to the problem of overproduction. Because human beings, with our creativity and our brilliance and our efficiency, are constantly making great leaps. And frequently, our innovation and our ability to create things exceeds the narrow constraints of the irrational profit motive. The irrationality of markets and profits is too narrow for the brilliance of mankind. We are capable of building a world where no one is homeless. We are capable of building a world where no one is hungry. We are capable of building a world where everyone has whatever they need. But the productive forces are held back by a primitive mode of distribution. A primitive mode of accumulation centered around private ownership of the means of production and profit-oriented production. And this primitive mode of distribution, this primitive mode of accumulation, leads to situations where there's gluts on the market. Leads to situations where they have to bury billions of pounds of cheese in a cave in Missouri in order to drive the price of dairy up and not have all the farmers go out of business. Leads to a situation where the government has to spend billions and billions of dollars on weapons and bombs and tanks just to keep the economy rolling along. A military-industrial complex. Leads to a situation where they use locking people in jail as a mechanism for stabilizing the economy, a prison industrial complex. leads to a situation where people become homeless because there are too many houses, where people become hungry because there is too much food. Human beings are capable of creating on a vastly larger scale than the irrational profit motive is capable of distributing and accumulating and acquiring and assigning what we produce. And socialism is breaking humanity out of the restraints of the irrationality of capitalism and mobilizing humanity around a central plan of production so that the springs of cooperative wealth flow more abundantly and the narrow horizon of bourgeois right is crossed in its entirety. What we are advocating is rational economics. People should not be poor because too much stuff exists. People should not be hungry because too much food exists. People should not be homeless because too much housing exists. What we are advocating is nothing more than the triumph of reason and rationality over the chaos and greed of the market. We are calling for human beings to assert our popular will and take hold of the gigantic machines, the gigantic oil wells, the gigantic fields and factories and farms and big box stores, all this brilliant apparatus of production that we've created. We are saying that human beings should tame the dragon, tame the beast, jump on top of this bucking bronco and rein it in so that all of its power can be rationally concentrated. The difference between capitalism and socialism is the difference between lightning and plugging a product in to an outlet. Right now, there's so much energy and so much creativity and so much production, but it's wild. It's wild. It's everywhere. It's striking here. It's striking there. It's like lightning. Socialism is centralizing, controlling, and accumulating electrical power so it can flow rationally and light up our homes and make the world work. The difference between socialism and capitalism is the difference between a thunderstorm and a beautiful modern hydroelectrical power plant. That's the analogy that Frederick Engels makes in Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, this beautiful book. And that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to liberate the productive forces from the irrationality of the market. And we can see what China has achieved with this. We can see what Vietnam has achieved with this. We can see what has been achieved in so many different places when the irrationality of the market is overcome. We can see this. And we dare to challenge the myth of the 20th century that says, oh, socialism doesn't work. No. It failed everywhere it's ever been tried. Oh, boy. As if space travel wasn't invented by the Soviet Union. As if the Soviet Union didn't build the Great Dnieper Dam. As if the Soviet Union didn't wipe out illiteracy. As if the Soviet Union didn't defeat the Nazis. As if the Soviet Union didn't have the greatest films and, electrify and modernize an entire country. As if China today, with its state central plan, its 5-year economic plans, and huge state-run industries, and its ruling Communist Party isn't the second largest economy in the world, as if Vietnam hasn't overseen an economic miracle, as if Nicaragua isn't miles ahead of Guatemala and Honduras and other free market countries in Central America, as if Gaddafi's Libya didn't have the highest life expectancy on the continent and didn't build the great man-made river. Everywhere we can see the evidence of socialism's success as an economic system. Everywhere. And they've pumped us with the myth of the 20th century, the myth that says, oh, socialism never worked. It just didn't work. Oh, boy. You know, they've pumped us with the myth of the 20th century. We stand up to the myth of the 20th century. We call it out for the lie that it is. We say that human beings are capable of rationally organizing production and that growth no longer needs to be restrained by the irrationality of the market. And this message is very threatening. If we just talked about worker co-ops, they wouldn't be threatened by us. We just talked about maybe giving people free health care, they wouldn't be threatened by us. But our message negates their entire system. Capitalism in its monopoly stage, imperialism, the rule of the world by gigantic banks and corporations that are trying to impoverish the world, that have sunk their fangs into Africa and Asia and Latin America, that have created a border crisis where millions of people in South and Central America can't live in their home country, that turned the Arab Spring into a nightmare of refugees drowning in the Mediterranean, and hunger and death and terrorism. This satanic global elite, these monopolists who sit at the top of the world and are calculating how they can reduce global crop outputs, how they can force countries in the developing world to grow less food to save Mother Earth from climate change, who sit there and try to figure out how they can use financial manipulation with BlackRock to force countries to do what Sri Lanka did and go organic and reduce their crop outputs. What kind of sociopaths see a global food crisis and say, how can we make sure people have less food? This is Satan. This is Satan that we're looking at here. What kind of forces put up Jane Goodall to tell the world we need to reduce the population to what it was 500 years ago? We are dealing with an evil, an anti-human evil on a scale the world has never seen. We are dealing with forces that are trying to put the baby back into the mother's womb. We are dealing with forces that think the only way they can stay at the top of the pyramid is to roll back the wheels of history, but history does not move backwards. We are dealing with dark and sinister forces. We are dealing with forces that view human beings as no better than animals. They want to breed us like dogs and sheep. Want to cull the herd. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with forces that want you to hate your neighbor because they also hate your neighbor. We're dealing with forces that want you to believe that human beings are just inherently selfish and could never think of other people because they are inherently selfish and they never think of other people. We are dealing with dark and sinister forces right now. Forces that could have ended this war in Ukraine a long time ago. Forces that know there is no way the government in Kiev is ever going to take back Crimea. There's no way the government in Kiev is ever going to take back control of Lugansk or Donetsk. Never. It will not happen. And they know this. But they are so committed to trying to weaken Russia that they are willing to just keep unloading weapons into Kiev and throwing away people's lives and letting people die in this war because of their greed. We are dealing with a level of evil, inhuman evil, that is beyond our comprehension. But we must keep resisting. Because Mao came down from that mountain and he rolled right over the Japanese invaders, and he rolled right over Chiang Kai-shek. And on October 1st, 1949, he rolled into Beijing and he said, the Chinese people, 1/4 of humanity, have stood up. It was a long march, 25 years of armed struggle before the Chinese communists could take power. But they did take power. They did take power. They took power all right. And after they took power, I'm going to show you a monument. This is a monument that they built. A lot of people don't know about this monument, but I want you to know about this monument. Jason Unruhe, the Maoist Rebel News guy, he tries to deny this monument even exists. But I'm going to show you this monument because it's really, really important. This is a monument that after Mao came to power in China, he built. And this is a monument that Mao built. This is called the Monument to the People's Heroes. It's in Tiananmen Square. It's one of the first monuments that was built by the Chinese communists after they took power. It honors eight different historical figures in Chinese history who fought for the liberation of the country from the imperialists. And number two on this monument is the Taiping Rebellion. And what was the Taiping Rebellion? The Taiping Rebellion was an uprising that started in China in 1851. China was oppressed. The peasants were oppressed by the landlords. The whole country was being oppressed by the British Empire. And there was a guy in China who had a vision. And for whatever reason, I don't know if the guy was crazy. I don't know if the guy was delusional. I don't know if the guy made it up for political purposes. But for whatever reason, this man in China believed that he was Jesus Christ's younger brother. And Christianity had just been introduced to certain parts of China. It was new. And this guy believed he was Jesus Christ's younger brother, and he mobilized millions of Chinese people to fight to build God's heavenly kingdom on earth, the Taiping Rebellion, the Taiping Uprising. From 1850 to 1871, 21 years, a peasant army fought to build God's kingdom on earth in China. And one of the first things that Mao did when he came to power was build a monument to commemorate the Christians of the Taiping Rebellion. The Christians who fought to build a new China as part of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. They'll never tell you that there's a monument to Christian revolutionaries in Tiananmen Square. They'll never tell you that. They don't want you to know that. They want that to be hidden from you. They want you to believe that in China they just persecute Christians all the time, blah, 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 blah. They don't want you to know about this monument. They don't want you to know that Mao studied the Taiping Rebellion and the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom excessively when he was a young man. They don't want you to know that. Doesn't fit the narrative. Doesn't fit the narrative. But it's the truth. It is absolutely the truth. And they don't want you to know this. They want to hide these things from you. But I'm bringing all of this up. I'm talking about Mao, and I'm talking about production and electricity, and I'm talking about our group, and I'm showing you clips from Peter Coffin's documentary, and I'm playing Wagner music. I'm going all over the place tonight, but it all has a point. It all has a point. It all has a point. And the point is that what we are doing here with the Center for Political Innovation is of the utmost importance. The utmost importance. You know, it's very funny. Very funny indeed. Some people try to say, oh, we don't matter as the CPI. Oh, the CPI doesn't matter. In fact, that was one of the talking points of the wreckers when they were going around to people. And there were people that were like, maybe you shouldn't do this. You know, this is going to hurt everyone. They're like, oh, the CPI doesn't matter. Oh, the CPI doesn't matter. CPI doesn't matter. That was their talking point. They said it to everybody. Everyone who said to them, maybe you shouldn't do this, like maybe there's no point in this, they're like, oh, but CPI doesn't matter. Well, if CPI doesn't matter, why have they spent literally millions of dollars to try and silence us, to try and smear us, and try to inoculate people against us? Why? Why have they spent literally millions of dollars? We've never spent $1 million, right? I mean, we don't have that much money in CPI, right? We do a conference here, we do a conference there, but I mean, we collect dues money, $10 a month to be a member. But compared to the amount of money we have to put on a conference here, to have a little protest here, they have spent literally millions of dollars to try and silence us. They have gone to, there's a YouTube channel. There's multiple YouTube channels that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers that have done videos smearing us and lying about us that are 2.5 hours long. 2.5 hours of content, just lying, to taking things that I've said out of context to make it sound like I hate Muslims when I risked my life on a ship in Yemen, trying to bring medical aid to Yemen. They're trying to say that they hate immigrants when my wife is an immigrant, when I've been protesting for immigrants for years, trying to say I'm a white nationalist. Going out of their way to attack me, to attack CPI on a personal level, to attack Peter Coffin, to attack all kinds of people. Hundreds of thousands of viewers. These channels, to buy time on a YouTube channel like that, to get somebody to do that kind of work ain't cheap. That's paid work. That's paid work to get people to aim their social media at us, demonize us. That's paid work. And they haven't just done it on one channel. They've done it on multiple channels. Multiple channels have been set up and sponsored in order to smear the Center for Political Innovation. In addition to that, we now know that the wreckers, the people who attacked us, were paid. The people who attacked the Center for Political Innovation were paid to do what they did. Those people were paid to do what they did, and we actually have one of them went on record saying that. They spend all their time attacking you because they are paid. Just like the Medium article, that was a paid for attack. People were paid to do that to you. And he would know. He would know because he was one of them. And he was desperately, desperately poor. He was one of them. So ask yourself, if we're not important, if we're not very, very important, Ask yourself, why do they have to spend millions of dollars to convince you? To hate us if we don't matter. I mean, they have gone out of their way. Do you know how much money that would cost to get multiple huge YouTube channels to smear us? Not free. And then to go around the country paying and offering money to ex-members to get them to talk shit about us. And I mean, I got to tell you, they went all out. They went all out, right? They wanted to cancel our conference in Chicago, right? They called me up, one person, and I think you all know exactly who I'm talking about. You all know exactly who it was. And I called him up and I said, have I hurt you in any way? This is a person I've known. They've been an associate of mine. I said, have I hurt you in any way? And he said to me, no, you haven't hurt me. And then I said to him, you know, I contested some of the things I was hearing. And I said, you know, I mean, you know, that's not true, what's going around. And he said to me, are you sure of that? And I said, yes, I'm sure. I'm sure that what you're saying, you know, is not true. And he said, well, let's get specific. And I thought, yeah, you're recording this call, aren't you? You're recording this call. I'm not stupid, so I'm not going to get specific with you. And then he said, I guess you're going to have to cancel the conference, right? And I said, no, we're not going to cancel the conference. We are not going to cancel the conference in Chicago. We are not going to cancel the conference. And he said, yeah, but you got to cancel the conference. I said, nope, not going to cancel the conference. Not going to cancel the conference. Not going to do it. And he was like, but we're going to put this out like during the conference. It's going to really embarrass you. And I said, I'm still not going to cancel the conference. And I hung up the phone. That was one of their primary aims, to cancel the conference we did in Chicago. That was one of their primary operations. And then somebody who, you know, somebody I could name on here, but I'm not going to, out of willingness to not create drama, contacted Tara Reade. Tara Reade spoke at the conference. Somebody who I will not name called up Tara Reade in the middle of the night and tried to get Tara Reade not to come to the conference. Tara Reade gets a phone call from somebody she doesn't know. In the middle of the night, her phone goes off, and it's a woman talking hysterically, and she is hysterical. And I will say that over and over again because she is hysterical. Talking to Tara Reade hysterically on the phone, trying to get her to cancel the conference. Get her not to come. She doesn't. And she says, do not ever contact me again. She hangs up the phone and she tells me about it. She's got her flight booked. She comes to town. We did our conference. Anyhow. And who did we invite to speak at the conference? We invited the Uhuru movement. The Uhuru movement. A group of black revolutionaries who just had their homes raided by the FBI. I was getting calls about the Uhuru movement and how their homes were being raided. And I said, we got to have them there. And so I contacted them. I showed their broadcast, their press conference about being raided on the conference. And, you know, had them come. They spoke at our conference. It just had their homes raided by the FBI. We had them come and speak at the Center for Political Innovation Conference. We gave a platform. You're absolutely welcome, John. We gave a platform to a group of black revolutionaries that were under attack by the government. And we gave an award to Tara Reade. And we had Nick Brana from the People's Party speak. And we had Garland Nixon speak. And we had Chris Halali from the Party of Communists speak. Here, we'll show you the clip of the Uhuru movement. This is what they were trying to cancel. This is what they were trying to prevent from happening. This event. We'll put it up here. Here we go.
We put forward this vision of rebuilding America with popular power, breaking out of their globalist financial system. We must oppose all political repression. The deep state is moving in on too many people right now, threatening their rights. And that is why we absolutely condemn the horrendous FBI raids carried out against the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru House, and Chairman Omala. Here today to show that we are not afraid, we are not intimidated, and that we offer nothing but unequivocal full support and solidarity to them while they're under attack. Please stand up, comrades. Come on the stage, please. And civil rights activists as agents of Russia is one of the dirtiest tricks of the U.S. deep state. They called Martin Luther King Jr. a Soviet agent. They called the Nation of Islam foreign agents. And we are here today to say that black people have the right to organize, fight for their rights however they choose, and that the U.S. government has no right to call them Russian agents or repress them in any way. The FBI raids must now stop. Must stop immediately now. Stop the raids. We want to turn the podium, the microphone over to our guests. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Columbayi Antoinette, and how I always start any speech that I ever do is with a chant. So I want to teach you, or maybe you already know it, join in, because this is just the meditation of my heart, even coming here, and why it would never be any kind of retreat. We would never surrender. We would never compromise. We will continue to move forward and build. Fist up! Fist up! Fist up! Fist up! Fist up! This is what fight back look like. So I just really want to start off by saying I really want to appreciate the organizers that put on this event, no matter what road you have took, small, big, or large, for making this gathering happen and reaching out to the Uhuru movement and seeing this unjust raid is your fight. That they came after us today, but who's next? Because this is an attack against the whole black community. We see this not just an attack against Chairman Omala Yeshitela, Akile Anai, Deputy Chair Ona Zane Yeshitela, Chairwoman Penny Hess, Jesse Knoll, and all of our comrades that were directly attacked from this raid. But this is an attack against all of us. That's how we see it. So I say, I want to slow down, because I have been traveling here from St. Louis, Missouri. And when Chairman told me, I'm sending you to Chicago and speak to a group of people, I went to y'all website. I said, Chairman, you sure me? You sure you want to send me? And the reason why I didn't have the confidence at first to come, because to be truthful, I am part of the peasant. I'm a girl from Walnut Park, and I know most of you might not know what Walnut Park, but it has been a neighborhood in St. Louis, Missouri that has been the the #1 murder capital for several decades now. And so where I come from, nothing good's come from. They don't stand in groups or understand anything that happens internationally or anything like that. So I'm going to apologize for every word that I attempt to say that I say wrong. I hope you catch my drift. Okay? But I am a glaring example of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the work of the African People's Socialist Party in the dedication of bringing the African working class into political life. That we understand that the attack on the African community, the black community, goes long before. That it has not been a time that black people haven't been struggling against this horrific genocide system that has attacked Africa over 600 years ago. That ever since 600 years ago, that it's never been a generation that haven't struggled for our liberation. And every single time that we have organized and we have came into organization, from the great Marcus Garvey and all of the ones, Malcolm X, it has been attacked. That's what we know. So, and I am an example of the African working class being able to stand before you and speak in my own voice about our struggle against imperialism. Russia is not responsible for me coming into political life. Russia is not responsible for my mom sitting on the pews twice in the church for her sons being murdered in the streets of St. Louis, Missouri. Russia is not responsible for sending my father to an unjust war in Vietnam. That was not our war. And that was not Russia that sent my father to Vietnam. That was not Russia that dumped dope in the black community and declared war on my community and made sure that we would not have any way to feed our family beyond crack cocaine in our community. It was not Russia that my father went to Vietnam and had Agent Orange, and because I'm 42 with a heart condition that America would not pay for right now, that was not Russia. And I did not need Russia to tell me that I was colonized. But it was August 9th, when Mike Brown was slayed on Canfield Drive, that I took to the street as a black woman that understood that every single time or any kind of relationship that I ever had with the so-called police have been terrorists in my community. That a year before Mike Brown was murdered, I was pregnant with my first child in Ferguson, where they pulled me over with my sister in the car. We had did nothing wrong, but as it was common practice, so this is not something that I had not ever went through. But to make a long story short, because I had a Metrolink ticket from 1997, when the year is 2010, that they take me to jail and shove me against their car. My water broke. They would not call the paramedics because they said I was lying. I peed on myself, because you know what they think about black women. We don't feel nothing. We can't feel pain. It wasn't until another police officer came that decided that let's call the paramedics, where they told me that my child had 50% chance of survival. Where the police stood outside my hospital room like I murdered somebody. This is the trauma that black community experienced. So I don't see any way that America be reformed. Because everything that I ever known of how it has been built has been on my back and on the indigenous people's land.
You got to ask yourself, what kind of evil people would want to stop a conference like that? What kind of forces would be so pro-imperialist and so in support of the police state and so in support of the American government and the imperialist apparatus that they would go to great lengths to prevent the Uhuru movement that had just gotten their homes raided by the FBI from being honored that way? What kind of forces would be so determined to stop Tara Reade, the heroic victim of Joe Biden who's refused to back down from being given a platform, to stop Garland Nixon, to stop Nick Brana? These were some sinister forces that plotted against us. They were absolutely sinister. Absolutely sinister. And the operation that they carried out was sophisticated, and it was well funded, and it took months and months of preparation. They were conspiring for months, going around to different people. I got phone calls from people I hadn't spoken to in years, people I went to college with, telling me about how random people had discovered their phone number or found them on Facebook and were pressuring them. Come on, just say this about Caleb. Just say this about Caleb. And they said, well, I can't say that. That's not true. Well, come on. You got to be able to find some way that we can say something. People that I haven't spoken to in years, people that knew me when I was in my early 20s, were contacted by these cynical, maniacal, pro-imperialist, evil people and pressured to try and convince them to give testimonies against me. Right? This is how evil the forces we are up against are, right? And we know who is involved, right? We know the main names, right? I've seen it in the chat. I'm not going to highlight it. We know the primary person that they got to. We also know that the Cult Awareness Network, Dr. Steve Hassan, that he was involved, and the X-Cult Network, those kind of people were involved. We also know that there were forces involved that are tied into, certain internet communities. I'm not going to go into huge detail. We know where this came from. And we know why it was done. But we also know that it failed as an operation. It completely and utterly failed. All it did was make us stronger. CPI had never made a documentary 1 year ago. Never once had the Center for Political Innovation produced a documentary. We produced one in March, and we're about to produce one and release one in a couple days. We'll have had 2 documentaries pretty soon. The biggest CPI event that we had ever had last August was 120 people came to our event in Austin, Texas. Well, the event we had February 19th with Scott Ritter was 200 people, at least between 160 and 200 people. So we've had bigger events since then than we had before. We had only ever had conferences that lasted a single day. We had a conference in Austin that lasted for 1 day. We had a conference in Chicago that lasted for 1 day. Well, now we've had a conference in Washington, D.C. that lasted for 2 days, a 2-day conference. We had guests from Britain, Jyoti Brar, who flew in from the United Kingdom. We had people from all over the country who came for our event. We've had training schools. We had a training school in Missouri. It was just very effective. We are marching ahead as an organization. Their sinister operation that they carried out against us completely failed. Completely failed and utterly miserably failed. It exposed a lot of people, a lot of frauds, a lot of phonies, and a lot of weaklings left. And we regrouped quietly. And we waited. And then we came back with an energy that had never been seen before. We came back with more funding and more dedicated people. We've published more books. You know, this is interesting. I've written a number of books before, right? I've written a number of books before, right? But I wrote this book because it needed to be written. I wrote this book, Where is America Going? It needed to be written. Right? I needed to write this book, right? Because it's all the unique concepts that we talk about on these broadcasts. You know, we talk about the problem of overproduction. We talk about counter gangs, Bonapartism, divisions in the ruling class, the coming triumph of illiberalism. It was all the unique concepts that we talk about. They needed to be written in this book. So I wrote this book and we published it in February, right? This book, Kim Iverson heard about this book and she said, we've got to have you on the show. I did a segment, an entire segment about this book on the Kim Iverson show, right? When has anything like that ever happened before? When? When has that ever happened before, right? It's wild. It's absolutely wild, but we did it. We absolutely did it. It was a great success. We have done so much. I mean, and we were part of the Humanity for Peace protest that just happened in New York City. We had our own event July 10th. That was a big success. We had a rally beforehand and then we had the event. Let me add, right? This is worth mentioning, right? When we marched to the UN rally, right? Do you remember that? The United Nations rally. There was a group of religious leaders was having a rally at the United Nations. And we marched, we brought a Rage Against the War Machine CPI contingent to the Interfaith March. I don't know if you saw this.
Russia, peace with China, peace with Russia, peace with China. It's time to stand for peace here at the United Nations. We are marching up to the religious rally. Russia and China are not our enemy. Peace with Russia, peace with China, 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 peace with Russia, peace with China.
So next up, we'd like to welcome up the founder of the Center for Political Innovation.
We're here today to do something that brings us all together. Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, leftists, rightists, whatever your ideology is, war still kills you. War still destroys you. And what's happening in the world right now is very, very frightening. Praying for peace with China. We're praying for peace in the Caribbean, peace in Latin America, peace in Asia, peace in Africa. It's something we can all agree on. And in the back, I want you to notice we brought a banner with us. And that banner has a beautiful picture on it. And that's a picture, regardless of how you feel about American politics, that was a historic moment. When Donald Trump shook hands with Kim Jong-un, that was a historic moment. And one thing I think that we can recognize here is that if Korea could come together, if Korea could reconcile, the whole world could come together if we had peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, we talked about peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. And, you know, a member of our organization, or a friend, I guess, he hasn't joined yet, gave us this beautiful, beautiful coin. Beautiful, beautiful coin, this commemorative coin of the meeting between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. Beautiful, beautiful commemorative coin, remembering, you know, that great moment. And I don't know if you saw, but the United States just announced yesterday. I'm not exaggerating. It got very little attention in American media. It was all over the international press, TASS news agency, and RT. We covered it. got very little attention in American media, that Joe Biden just announced that he will meet with North Korea without preconditions. Did you see this? I don't know if you saw this. Joe Biden, the administration, just announced they are willing to meet with Kim Jong-un. Biden will meet Kim Jong-un without preconditions, he announced. That's huge, right? Since the Donald Trump talks stopped, there has been no progress. The United States has said the only condition on which we will meet with North Korea is if they give up their nuclear weapons. But yesterday, the Biden administration changed its position and said that it was willing to meet with North Korea without preconditions. That is a huge breakthrough. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen necessarily. That's a huge breakthrough. It's a huge breakthrough. And it's something that the Center for Political Innovation has been organizing and calling for months, right? For months, we've been calling for this. This was us in March during our conference that we had in March. We went over to the White House. We went over to the White House and we had this little rally at the White House. This is what we did.
How did this stop? This was a great moment. June 30th, 2019. The leader of People's Korea and the leader of the United States shook hands. They met, the first president ever to visit the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We had Donald Trump trying to make peace with a country that is still technically at war with the United States. Donald Trump was trying to open the door to peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. There would be hope to bring the troops home from South Korea. There would be hope that there could be denuclearization, that North Korea wouldn't feel threatened anymore, that there could be no more bombs and weapons, and the people of Korea could reunify. And Donald Trump going to People's Korea was sabotaged. It was sabotaged by John Bolton and the neocons, the same forces that got us into Ukraine, the same forces that are escalating and pushing buttons against China and Taiwan on the Taiwan Strait, the same forces that want World War III sabotaged the peace process on the Korean Peninsula. We're here to say, finish what Trump started. We want peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. We want U.S. leaders and the leaders of People's Korea to sit down. We would like to see trade between the United States and People's Korea. We would like to see those railroads in South Korea that have been built. We'd like to see them in action and see the Korean people trading with each other. We don't want war. We don't want money wasted on international confrontations. And we also don't want a police state. And at the same time that the big bankers who control Joe Biden, the Silicon Valley monopolists and fascists, the same forces that control Joe Biden, are waging a war not just around the world, but against the American people.
That was us at the White House. And it appears that what we've called for may happen. Our banner said, finish what Trump started. And it looks like the Biden administration has changed its position, and is now apparently open to talking with North Korea without preconditions. That is a huge victory. That's a huge victory, a huge step forward. Now, I'm not saying what's going to happen next is necessarily true, but it looks like what we've been rallying for and what we've been calling for is apparently happening. I mean, this is a really, really big deal. And don't think that us being out in front of the United Nations on multiple occasions with that banner, being in front of the White House with that banner, don't think that that didn't have anything to do with what's happening. It showed that that North Korea has people in the United States who support them, you know? And look, I am at the point where I don't care anymore, folks. I am at the point where I don't care about any of this cancel culture bullshit. Okay, I really don't care. I don't care about cancel culture, and I don't care what people call each other. I don't care what label people put on their heads. You know, the LaRouche people, right? I'm not a member of the LaRouche movement. I don't agree with them on a number of questions, but you know what? They have done more to support Russia and to support China during the current war crisis than any of the communist groups have done. Name one communist group that's done anything close to what the LaRouchites have done. So you know what? If they're having events around it and they want to have us speak and stuff, great. I have no problem going to LaRouche events. I have no problem. I'm not ashamed of the fact that we've platformed Daniel Burke and other people at our events, given LaRouchites opportunities to speak, because they're doing more to stop the war, and that's my position. And the same goes for the fact that, we have worked and continue to work with the Unification Church. I'm not a Mooney, right? That is not my religious persuasion. I'm not a follower of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, but they want peace on the Korean Peninsula. They want to reunify the Korean Peninsula. And Kim Jong-un sent a huge basket of roses to the widow, Mrs. Moon, to Hak Jahan Moon for her 80th birthday. A huge gift. And, they are calling and everything they do for peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. And they've got a lot of property and they've got a lot of influence in Republican circles. And if they're calling for peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula, that's something CPI can work with them on. They organized a great rally at the United Nations. Good for them. We'll work with them. I want to get things done in the real world. I am not interested in virtue signaling, grandstanding. And I'm at the point where I don't care what people's ideology is, because there are people who call themselves communists who are abominable, right? The internet is full of people who call themselves communists, and all that means is that they hate Republicans and are obsessed with the trans issue. That's not what being a communist means to me. But yet there's people like the Unification Church, like the LaRouchites, who don't call themselves communists, but they're doing stuff to try and bring peace about in this world. So I'll work with them. We may not agree on our ideology. We may not agree in our perspective, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing we can learn from them. Right? Both of those organizations have been viciously attacked by Dr. Steve Hassan. Dr. Steve Hassan, who attacked us, who I exposed in my BreadTube book, he's gone after the LaRouche movement, and he's also gone after the Unification Church. So we have the same enemy, and we're organizing for peace. I think there's people we can work with. The Libertarian Party, right? Next week, I'm going to talk with Angela McCurdle of the Libertarian Party. We're going to have a conversation. Well, you know what? Am I a libertarian? Absolutely not. Libertarians tend to believe in free market economics. I don't. I believe in socialism. But they're trying to stop the war. And most so-called communists and socialists are not. So I don't care. Nick Brana is a good friend of mine. We're going to show his video on here in the second half when I finally finish my opening remarks. I've been going for 2 hours and I'm going to keep going. But I don't care anymore. I work for RT, folks. I work at RT. I have met Vladimir Putin. I've been in the same room as him on 2 different occasions. I've met Alexander Dugin. I don't care. So anyone who's coming at me with this, oh my God, or do you want to be associated with blah, 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 just shut the fuck up. I don't care. I want to stop the war. I don't care. I don't care. And if you are going to come at me with some of that, you're not serious. That's what that means. Whenever I hear any of that, whenever, oh, don't you know that so-and-so is, you're not serious. You're not serious. And all of you that are watching right now, you need to develop that same kind of thick skin, because they are running a psychological operation. I told you they've spent more money than we've ever spent doing things. We've never had very much money to fund our operations, right? We have limited resources, but far more money has been spent going after us than has ever been spent, by us. And anybody who becomes part of our community immediately gets targeted with this. Oh my God, don't you know that Caleb's blah, 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 blah. No, I'm not. And on top of that, I just don't care. And, the fact that all of you are here and you're watching right now shows that you're the cream of the crop. You guys are you got the right stuff. You're made from a special mold, as Stalin would say, because you are not a coward, because they do everything they can to intimidate people out of associating with us. Look, weird shit is happening, folks. Weird shit is happening. I recently tweeted about this, and I will just tell you all about a weird thing that happened a couple days ago. A couple days ago, I got a phone call and some text messages inviting me to an event in New York City by supporters of Alexander Navalny. Navalny is the anti-Putin extremist backed by the United States, trying to overthrow the Russian government. The Western media's favorite Russian dissident who's in prison in Russia right now for not paying his taxes and other things. And there's going to be some kind of rally to support Navalny in New York City at some point on Sunday. Well, somebody claiming to be an acquaintance of mine contacted me and invited me to be part of a counter protest. And they told me that certain political allies of mine were involved. I then noticed this was not on social media, so I contacted those allies of mine. They were not involved. So I called this person back, and when the person who answered the phone had a different voice, and I said to this person, if you're really who you say you are, when was the last time we meet? When was the last time we met? And they gave me inaccurate information about when the last time we met was. This was obviously some kind of setup. All right. And I've passed along the information. We're conducting a thorough investigation. This was some kind of setup. They wanted me to go to the Navalny rally on Sunday. I don't know why. Maybe they were hoping that they would give my information to the Navalny people and that they would beat me up and harm me. Maybe they're planning some kind of false flag attack on the Navalny people and they were going to pin it on me. But somehow somebody was trying to set me up. They were lying to me, and they were trying to manipulate me to go to this Navalny event on Sunday for some reason. We don't know why. We don't know who this was or why they were doing what they were doing, but they were trying to get me to an event where a bunch of Russia haters were assembling for some reason. Now, I wasn't stupid enough to fall for it. As soon as I saw that this counter protest wasn't listed anywhere on social media, as soon as I checked with the people they claimed were involved, who said they weren't, I knew something was up. And then when I called the person back, the person who answered the phone was not the acquaintance of mine. And they claimed to be on the phone, and they clearly weren't. This was some kind of operation. Right? I am on the Ukrainian government's disinformation terrorist list. That's the kill list. The same list that Dari Dugina was on. The same list that Vladimir Tatarsky is on. There's sinister shit going on, folks. There is sinister shit. And I will not be anywhere near where this rally is happening on Sunday. And hear me for this. If something happens at that rally and they try to blame it on me, they're lying, because I didn't fall for it. I didn't fall for it. But they were trying to set me up. They were trying to set me up. What for? I don't know for sure. But they were trying to trick me into being in that spot at that time. And they were lying to me and telling me people were going to be there that clearly were not going to be there. And they did a pretty crappy job of it, right? There are much better ways of pulling things like this off. But it's very, very manipulative, right? And this is the kind of things that they do. These are the kind of operations that they run. You know, the book that I wrote that's going to be published next week, you know, I've come to understand things in my life that I used to not understand. I don't want to go into too much detail, but the letter that I wrote to this person, I've gained a new respect for this person in the last couple of years. I even apologized to this person, believe it or not, right? This letter is not a hit piece. I do reveal some information this person's not going to be thrilled about me revealing. That's just life. But I don't throw this person completely under the bus. I apologize to this person. I praise them for everything they've done right. This letter, I think, is my attempt to give an assessment of this person and their role in American communist history, what they've done right, what we can learn from, and where we just disagree, and some observations and some information about events that have happened. This book that's about to be published, some people have read it. And this is it's not like things I've written before. It has a different tone, and it's important that I write it. It's important that I write it, that I make the information that I've discovered, I've gotten about this person public, but also that I speak about the person in the nuanced way that I do. It's going to be very important. Keep your eyes out for this book that I've got coming out. It's going to be very, very, very important. Very, very important, right? Because part of the way you learn is you contrast your views with other people. The polemic is one of the most important things in the Marxist tradition. It's very, very important. So that's important. So keep your eyes out for it. I guess that's all I'll say about that. I guess I'll wrap up my opening remarks. I'll wrap them up this way, and then we'll get to our roll call. I just want to say this. When I think about Jesus Christ, I think about what he went through. It really makes me appreciate America, or at least one aspect of America. Because one thing that is said by many international observers of this country, many people who come to America from around the world, if you visit an urban center in the United States, you go to Cleveland, you go to Pittsburgh, you go to Philadelphia, you go to Milwaukee, you go to Los Angeles, you go to San Francisco, you go to Manhattan, there's a church on every block. You can't go 2 or 3 blocks in a major city in the United States without seeing a church. There's many different churches: Catholic, Lutheran, Methodist, Episcopalian, Jehovah's Witnesses. There's a church everywhere. And normally the way that a church is marked is it's a stone building that has a cross on it. And I think about that aspect of America. That you cannot, if you're in a city in the United States, you can't go far without seeing a church. There's going to be a church. You walk 2-3 blocks, there's another church. You walk 2-3 blocks, there's going to be a church. There are churches all over America. There are buildings with crosses on them all over America. And I think about that. Because I think about Jesus being crucified. How Jesus on the cross, one of the things he's reported to have said is, "Forgive them, they know not what they do." And they didn't know what they were doing. They did not know what they were doing because they thought, when they nailed Jesus Christ to a cross, they thought that that was going to be the end of Jesus of Nazareth. They thought that was the last that anybody will ever be talking about this guy, this troublemaker. That's the end. The story's over. He's crucified. All done. And I would so much like to bring those soldiers, Pontius Pilate, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, I would like to bring them back to a place they'd never heard of, 2,000 years in the future. Walk with them through the streets of Cleveland and through the streets of Pittsburgh and the streets of Manhattan, the streets of San Francisco. Show them building after building after building after building after building after building. It's got a certain symbol on it. And I'd like to ask them, do you know what that symbol stands for? Do you know what that means? They would be perplexed. Why are there so many buildings with crosses on them? And I would say to them, remember that guy you nailed to a cross 2,000 years ago? Remember how you thought you'd heard the last of him? Well, the joke's on you, buddy. The joke is on you. The joke is on you because they've been talking about that guy for 2,000 years straight. You thought that was the last you were ever going to hear of Jesus Christ? Well, you're a fool. You're a fool. You were wrong. You couldn't be more wrong. You couldn't be more wrong because that guy that you nailed to a cross got far more powerful because of what you did to him. Far, far more powerful than he ever would have been if you hadn't. What you did by nailing him to a cross immortalized him and made him an object in history and gave people hope for thousands of years. And will continue to do that. And I think about that. I think about that a lot. Now, every time I see a building with a cross on it, that is revenge. That is the ultimate revenge. Not a cruel revenge. Right? We're not torturing people to death. You know, it's not like Jesus came up from the grave and went on a killing spree. Not that at all. Those buildings with crosses on them all over the planet that I see, that is the greatest revenge on the forces of evil that I have ever seen. You want to talk about a victory over evil. You want to talk about somebody who suffered horrifically being vindicated in the eyes of millions and millions of people. You talk about Jesus Christ. You want to talk about an underdog. You want to talk about a person who was oppressed. You want to talk about somebody who was persecuted, who got their vindication. Talk about Jesus Christ. And that is why I continue to utilize religious rhetoric with the Center for Political Innovation. That's why I continue to talk about Jesus being a socialist. Because that spiritual power that Jesus summoned, that ability to mobilize people, to sacrifice for truth, to live for the sake of others, to sacrifice for something far greater than their own material needs. That is amazingly powerful and amazingly beautiful. And if we're a serious political movement, we're serious about saving the United States from the disaster of liberalism, we have to tap into that spiritual power. You cannot build God's kingdom on earth without God. And while materialism is very important, and this is interesting, human beings are spiritual creatures. They just are. And one of the main points I make in this upcoming book is that you can claim to not have any religious feelings. You can claim to be purely materialist, purely atheistic, and dialectical materialist. You can claim that all you want. But there will be aspects of yourself that are spiritual. The feelings that you get, the passion that you feel will still be a part of who you are as a human being. You know, the most unfeeling, psychopathic person, there's an aspect of them. There is an aspect of them that is spiritual. And what I argue is that with a lot of communists, there is an attempt to suppress spiritual feelings. There is an attempt to deny them. An attempt to say, well, I'm above that. I don't have spiritual feelings. I don't have religious feelings. I don't believe in God. God is just an imaginary friend for grown-ups. I don't believe in God. I'm above it. And you say that. But there's still a part of you that has passion. There's still a part of you that believes in right and wrong, that wants to sacrifice. You wouldn't be a communist if you didn't have that in your soul somewhere. But when you suppress it, and when you deny it, it comes out in other ways. You shouldn't be asking your feelings or asking your spiritual feelings or your passion about whether or not a country is socialist. You shouldn't be asking your spiritual feelings about whether or not to support Russia and Ukraine. These are things that should be understood in a practical, economic, materialist way. Your position on Russia and Ukraine, your position on North Korea, your position on China and Cuba, your position on what's going on in the U.S. economy and what's going on in U.S. society should be a material position. It should be based on facts. But when you're building an organization and you're holding a group of people together, and you're helping people to learn from each other and trust each other, spirituality is very important. Getting people to trust each other, getting people to rely on each other, getting people to work together for a cause, getting people to make sacrifices, getting people to treat each other with kindness, listen to each other, learn from each other. All of that spiritual feelings and aesthetics is very important. Right? If you were going to join a communist group and you walked into the room and the vibe you got in that room was an unhealthy vibe, you'd be out of there and you'd be totally justified in being out of there. But if you walked into a room for a communist organization and the vibe you felt when you walked in was a group of people who seemed upstanding and friendly and trustworthy, seemed like they listened to you when you said things, seemed like they knew what they were talking about and they were sensible. If you got a good vibe from coming to a communist group, you'd stay and you'd join it. And that's correct. That's a spiritual question. There's no mathematical formula you can calculate about whether or not the group gives you a good vibe or not. That is a spiritual question. Do you walk into the room and do you feel the glow of love and energy? Or do you walk into the room and you feel, You can't do math to figure that one out. You can't come up with a rubric to determine it. There's no checklist you can make. Either you feel it or you don't. That's spiritual. That's what kind of spiritual power is in that room. Is it God's love or is it the forces of evil in that room? And that's purely a spiritual question. That's very important. But you should not base your position on China about how China makes you feel, because the way China makes you feel is going to be based on what you see in American television. And they're very good at manipulating things. You should not base your understanding of the U.S. economy on how people feel when you talk to them on the street. That is something that you have to draw from material facts. And what I see with a lot of communists, not just the person I'm writing the book about, but many communists, is that they use the spiritual part of their brain, their gut instinct, their feelings, their emotions. I don't like Putin. Putin makes me feel this way. Well, you're watching him on American fucking television. Of course he's going to make you feel that way. Your position on Putin should be based on facts. Things you can calculate, things you can add up. But your position on how to run your organization, that is a spiritual question. And if you don't acknowledge that spirituality exists, and you don't acknowledge that there is a spiritual side to mankind, if you don't acknowledge that you have a soul, if you don't acknowledge that part of what makes events and beautiful art is something divine, something beyond mere human consciousness, something spiritual. If you deny that, you're going to try to find it in other places, and you're going to do it in an unhealthy way. And that's what I see in this person's work. I see spiritual thinking, religious thinking, all throughout his writing. Even though he claims to be an atheist, even though he claims to be a pure materialist, his analysis of many events is purely spiritual. It's about feelings. There's a place for feelings. There's a place for emotions. There's a place for how does this make me feel? There's a place for what vibe does this give me? There's a place for all of that. We don't deny that in CPI. That's why we talk about God. That's why we talk about Jesus. That's why we practice for our events. That's why we sing at our events. That's why we chant at our events. We are trying to create an atmosphere where people can get beyond the alienation and individualism that they feel in this society. We are trying to create an atmosphere where people can transcend the isolation that this society grips people with, where people can come beyond the narrowness and the shallowness and the pessimism and the hopelessness that this society pours out onto us. We are trying to give people a place where they can feel love, where they can feel purpose, where they can feel like they belong. We are trying our hardest to bring some light into this dark and hateful and hopeless, pessimistic world. We are trying to use what little resources we have and little energy and little time we have to build something beautiful in this dark world. We're trying to do something right. We're trying to do something to give people hope and give people energy and give people a reason to be, a reason to believe, a reason to trust again, the reason to feel again. We're trying to connect people with their souls, to give people what's been stolen from them by this system. That is what we are trying so hard to do. It's not easy. It's not easy to do. It's not something you can just do by feeling like it. It's not something you can just read out of a manual. It's hard. It's very hard to do what we do, but we are committed to doing it. We are committed to doing it because so many people need the love, the light, and the hope that we can offer them. So many people need it. So many people are longing for it. So many people want it. They want that warmth in their soul. They want that purpose. They want that energy. They want that reason to be. They want that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that comradeship. They want it so badly. They want it. And we can offer it. We can provide it. We can. And if you want to call that a cult, go ahead. Or if you want to call that brainwashing and mind control, go ahead. If you want to call that evil, if you want to call that sinister, if you want to call that, you can put whatever label you want to put on it. We're trying to give people the energy, the hope, and the ability to overcome all the darkness and evil around us. We're trying to give people what they need to fight back, to survive, to live. We're trying to give people what they long for in these dark times. That's what we're trying to do. And that's spiritual. That's not something you can read from a book. That's not something you can do a mathematical formula to figure out. But we're offering people a very rational ideology. An ideology that explains the basis of the economy, that explains the way the world works, how history marches forward, the contradictions of history, the nature of the capitalist economy. We're offering people a very, very rational, materialist, dialectical, and historical worldview. While at the same time, we offer them something spiritual that they long for. And the way that we can do both of those things at the same time is because we know it. We recognize that you see with your eye, you smell with your nose, you taste with your mouth. That's the truth. You see with your eyes, you smell with your nose, you taste with your mouth. You need a nose, you need eyes, you need a mouth. And human beings are spiritual, and that spirituality is going to come out one way or another. Human beings are also rational, and that rationality is also going to come out one way or another. And that what we're doing serves humanity in different ways. We serve you on a rational level, and we also serve you on a spiritual level. And you have to do both. And if you deny them, if you deny those needs, and if you try to claim that you're only doing things in a rational way, you're not going to have a healthy relationship with your spiritual side. And if you claim you're only doing things in a spiritual way, you're not going to have a healthy relationship with your rational side. Right? And that we are conscious and honest of about what we are doing. That's what we're doing, and that's why we're healthy. We don't have delusions that we're the vanguard, that we're going to take power tomorrow in some kind of armed revolution, but we also don't have the delusion that we're irrelevant. We don't have the delusion that we have the one true way and that we have a totalistic ideology as the answer to all questions. No. We know what we know. We know what imperialism is. We know what capitalism is. We know what socialism is, why Eurasia is rising, why the West is dying. We know all that. We know these things. We know what we know and we're confident about it, but we don't claim to know things that we don't know. We only claim to know the things that we do know. And we're aware that while we are teaching a rational worldview, we are also fulfilling an irrational or spiritual need. We're aware that while we're trying to expand and while our influence is apparently much bigger than we've even imagined, that we're a small organization, that we can only accomplish so much. We're aware of things. We are conscious of who we are. We do not have a delusional sense of self. And this is part of maturity. Right? Part of being a mature person is being aware of your actual size. And I think that's part of political maturity. Being aware, being able to say, this is how big we are. This is what we are capable of accomplishing. And this is how we will carry it out. That is a task that I've seen massive organizations not capable of admitting. When you know how big you are, when you know what you are capable of doing, you can then begin to carry out operations based on your knowledge of your own strength and your own knowledge of your own capabilities. And as you know yourself better, and as you figure out how to do what you're doing better, you can gradually start to carry out your operations more and more effectively. That's what we're doing. We're carrying out operations. We're getting better at the work that we're doing. We're figuring out how to do things we never thought we could do. We're winning over new people. We're marching forward. And those are my opening remarks for tonight. So hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notifications bell. Those are my opening remarks for tonight. I had a lot to say, but it was all important. It was all important. And, you know, it's been a great year. It's been a great year, a great comeback, a great recovery. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? We got Klaus Kinski is in Germany. Welcome, Klaus. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We got Timoshenko in St. Louis. Welcome, 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 Timoshenko. Klaus Kinski in Germany. Names and locations. Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Zach Brunch in Richmond, Virginia. He's got a great TikTok channel. Go subscribe. Josiah Preston in Utah. StarCraft fellow in New York. Kieran from New Jersey. Welcome, Kieran. Maddie in California. Low in DPRK. Steve and Ann in Georgia. John McCarthy in Chicago. Meredith and Quinn in Washington. AJ and NJ. Jose Gonzalez in Venezuela. Heidi in Edinburgh, Scotland. AJ and NJ. Panos in Greece. Chairman Robert says, pray for Maui. Briggy in Pennsylvania. Greece. Panos. Jamie in St. Paul. Patch in Arizona. Colin in Greensboro. Bob Troy in New York. Ottawa, Canada. JT24 from Mississippi. Temple City, California. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Joe in New Jersey. Home of the Revolution. Home of the Revolution. Da, 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 da. All right, we got Auckland, New Zealand. Kiwi Corner is watching on Rumble. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We got Samuel in GSI in Atlantic City, Door 24. He's also watching on the Rumble. Names and locations. All right, we got Alex and Susan from Montreal, Quebec. Chris in Salt Lake City. Temple City, California. Very, very, very good. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. St. David's, Bermuda is also watching on the Rumble. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, yeah, as names come in, I'll continue reading them. But in honor of Maui, there is a sea shanty. I love sea shanties. That's a type of music that I've developed a love for. You know what sea shanties are? Sea shanties are songs that were sung by sailors. And, sailors tended to overwhelmingly be men. So because of that, they tend to be deep voiced singing. And there's a sea shanty called Rolling Down to Old Maui. And it was just about sailors going down to Maui. So let me see if I can find a version of it. I particularly like Down to Old Maui. I like it. So let me see if I can find a version on here that I'm not going to get in trouble for playing. It's not going to cause me problems on my YouTube channel to play, right? I want to find a version that will play and not cause problems for the channel. But I think we'll put on a sea shanty while I play Down to Old Maui. I'd like a version. Okay, here's a guy called Chris Murphy, and he's singing different parts of it. So we'll download Chris Murphy's version of Down to Old Maui. It's a version that I think we can get away with playing. So let me just download it, and we'll put on Down to Old Maui. Arnold and Joyce in Texas. Shout out to you, Arnold and Joyce. Glad you're with us. There you go. There you go. Yeah, we're just doing Down to Old Maui, which is a sea shanty that I like in honor of Maui and the fires they've been having out there. So we'll put that on here for a little bit. That'll be kind of, Kieran, epic opening remarks. Proud to be CPI. Well, Kieran, you are an awesome, beloved member of our community. Kieran is always there whenever we're doing something in the New York, New Jersey area. He was a great participant in our recent, training school in Missouri. And, Kieran, it's an honor to know you. You're a great person. And we've been on each other's radar screen for quite some time. And it's really great that we've connected and we're now part of the same organization. So thank you, Kieran. And, there we go. So I'm going to put on Rolling Down to Old Maui. Right. I'm going to put that on because that's an honor. It's a sea shanty. It's a sailor song about Maui. And I love sea shanties. I might even play some other sea shanties after this. So here we go. Rolling Down to Old Maui, right? If it loads in the thing. Don't you love it? I don't know why it takes so long for it to show up here, but we're going to put it on. Rolling Down to Old Maui. So yeah. Here we go. Classic sea shanty. Chris Murphy performing.
It's a damn tough life full of toil and strife we whalermen undergo. And we don't give a damn when the gale is done how hard the winds did blow. 'Cause we're homeward bound from the Arctic ground with a good ship taut and free. And we won't give a damn when we drink our rum with the girls of Old Maui. Rolling down to Old Maui, me boys, rolling down to Old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to Old Maui. Once more we sail with the northerly gale through the ice and wind and rain. Them coconut fronds, them tropical lands we soon shall see again. 6 hellish months we've passed away on the cold Kamchatka Sea. But now we're bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to Old Maui. Rolling down to Old Maui, me boys, rolling down to Old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to Old Maui. Once more we sail with the northerly gale towards our island home. Our mainmast sprung, our whaling done, and we ain't got far to roam. Our stunsail bones is carried away, what care we for that sound? A living gale is after us, thank God we're homeward bound. Rolling down to Old Maui, me boys, rolling down to Old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic round, rolling down to old Maui. How soft the breeze through the island trees, now the ice is far astern. Them native maids, them tropical glades is awaiting our return. Even now their big brown eyes look out, hoping some fine day to see. Our baggy sails running for the gales, rolling down to old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, boys, rolling down to old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic round, rolling down to old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, boys, rolling down to old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic round, rolling down to old Maui.
I love sea shanties. I really do. I really do love sea shanties. And yeah, I've thought of that song a lot lately in light of the news about the fires in Maui and all of that. I mean, you've seen my reports about how decaying infrastructure significantly contributed to the accidents, to the fire, how the sirens didn't go off, and so I've been thinking about that. That's an old sailor song about going to Maui. Now I do want to remind people that the second half of the show is all you, right? And I've got several super chats to get through. But more super chats are better. And then I'll have more to talk about in the second half of our show. And it's late, but I ain't going nowhere, right? We can go as long as you want. So I'm going to put on, I think, another sea shanty, since I see folks in the chat calling for it. But I really urge you, if you have a question you would like me to answer in the second half of our show before we go, send me a super chat and I will do my best to give you an answer, right? We got about 6 super chats so far, but let's, a couple more would be great. Give me something to talk about, just ask me a question, get me talking. Yeah, we got a couple things, but I'm going to put on another sea shanty that I like, that I've liked for a while. It's kind of a sad one, and I'm going to put that one on. It's sad because it's like if you're in a certain place for a certain amount of time, right, you just kind of develop an attachment to it. It's just kind of normal. And you can imagine sailors, if they're on a ship for like months at a time, they develop an attachment to that ship. And so the song, this is one of the classic sea shanties. It's called "Leave Her, Johnny, Leave Her." It's sailors getting ready to leave the ship, and they've been on it for so long, and they're kind of sad to leave it because they've just become so attached to it, right? And that's what it's about. It's another sea shanty that I particularly like. So we'll put on "Leave Her, Johnny, Leave Her," right? And we'll just put it on here when it comes up. We'll put it on. Hold on, hold your horses. All right, hold up. Favorite genre of book besides politics? That's an interesting question. You're on the list, Chairman Robert. Very, very good. And yeah, we're going to put on one more sea shanty. We're also going to play Nick Brana's message because it was a beautiful message that Nick Brana gave to the Center for Political Innovation. So there we go. All righty. We got "Leave Her, Johnny, Leave Her." Still waiting for it to come up here. Right? "Leave Her, Johnny, Leave Her." We're going to put that on. Then we'll do Nick's message. There we go. "Leave Her, Johnny, Leave Her."
Well, I thought I heard the old man say, "Leave her, Johnny, leave her. It's a long, hard pull to your next Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done, and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, the skipper was bad, but the mate was worse. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. He would cut you down with a spike or a curse, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done, and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, pull your lovers, or you'll get no pay. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, pull your lovers, and then belay, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done, and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, well, now it's time for to say goodbye. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Those pilings, they are drawing nigh, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done, and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done, and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, classic sea shanty there. Leave her, Johnny, leave her, about leaving the ship that you've become attached to after several months. I've always liked that piece. All right, so now we're going to play. I'm just so proud that Nick Brana, the head of the People's Party, recorded a message for the CPI this morning. I am deeply moved by that. The morning messages are just getting better and better and better by the day. There's a great one that we're going to play tomorrow. I want it to always be a surprise who it's going to be. But, you know, Small Town Voice, she did one, great one. You know, a Chinese American friend out in Virginia, I've been doing a lot of YouTube streams with. And so now this is Nick Brana's morning message that aired, you know, this morning.
Hi, everyone. It's Nick Brana with the People's Party, here with a message for all of you at CPI. I want to say it's always a joy to organize with you because you are fiercely anti-imperialist. You reject the terminal wokeness that has captured so much of the left. You reject the Democratic Party and lesser evil logic, just like we do at the People's Party. In fact, it was Caleb who told me originally that the Communist Party of the United States is supportive of the Democratic Party, and I found it unbelievable. I mean, how can communists call themselves supporters of the Democratic Party, the most warmongering, woke, fascistic party that has destroyed any kind of social safety net in this country, dismantled the New Deal, promulgated mass incarceration? Just ridiculous. So you guys are always great to organize with. And I think first and foremost too, what I really respect about you guys is your tenacity, your determination, and your grit. Because like us at the People's Party, you have been pummeled and beat down and smeared and slandered so many times, but every time you get back up, and you get back up stronger. And that's what the working class in this country needs, because that's what working class people in this country have to deal with day in and day out. The price of gas is exploding, price of groceries are exploding, healthcare, it's all increasing, student debt, it blows up. Doesn't matter, Democrat or Republican, it blows up. The working class people of this country are beaten down every day, and they need people who understand what that's like and get back up and keep fighting like they do to speak for them. That's what they want. That's authentic. And you know, it's exciting to be organizing with you guys too, because there is a working class consciousness that is rising now. Something new, and it's palpable, and it's amazing to see. And it's been fantastic to play a role in that with Rage Against the War Machine, in bringing together people from all different ideological perspectives, libertarians, communists, socialists, people on the left, centrists, every perspective, to come together against the war state, against the establishment, against the deep state. Because my family comes from, as I think many of you know, Chile, country that was overthrown, a democratic, a socialist government, Allende, overthrown by the CIA coup, and ruled by a military dictatorship under Augusto Pinochet for 17 years. When that military dictatorship was dismantled, it was done so by a coming together, a coalition of 17 different political parties from across the political spectrum in Chile, who came together to reject the dictatorship and to demand a return to democracy, and they won. They defeated the dictatorship. That's what it takes. The woke siloed left that only believes in organizing with people who agree with them on every single issue, those people who attacked Rage Against the War Machine, so many of the people who attack you, who attack us, they will never get anything done, ever. That's why it comes down to people who are actually organizing around class consciousness first. You guys have probably seen this song that came around recently that people are calling a populist anthem, a working class anthem, Rich Men North of Richmond. You know, it's really interesting because the liberal media couldn't write it off fast enough as some kind of conservative right-wing trend. Well, they had better be careful about what they say and what they ascribe to the right, because the whole song is premised around rich men north of Richmond in DC, of course, but it's all premised on a class consciousness. And the fact that it's being embraced by the right is an extension, I think, of the fact, a continuation, another aspect of the phenomenon of what's happening, this convergence that's happening with Rage Against the War Machine in our country, this rising working class consciousness, for the right to be embracing a message of class consciousness, you know, including many Trump supporters. I've seen so many Trump supporters. I went online, I saw the reactions, you know, on YouTube, other places, to this song that is really a song about working class plight. It's incredible. It's incredible to see that happening. And the system is headed towards breakdown. And it is groups like ours that need to be there, building the coalitions like we are, bridging those gaps, those anti-imperialist working class gaps across ideologies, that are going to get something done as this system falls apart increasingly rapidly. So it's great to be organizing with you guys. Great to have found amazing organizing partners. I look forward to so many more awesome adventures with you guys. Keep up the great work. You're an inspiration to a lot of us, and we're always learning from you guys. And so look forward to a lot more. Take care.
That was a lovely message from Nick Brana of the People's Party. And he is a great ally and friend of all the work that we are doing. All right. Now, I don't see any Rumble rants at the moment, and I don't see any Rockfin tips. So it looks like I'm just going to start going through the super chat questions that have come in. And if anyone has any more, right, keep me going. I don't have anything early in the morning tomorrow. You know, if you're here for the long haul, you're here for a late night show, right? Go for it. I'm all here. Garland Nixon came to your defense last year. That's why I subscribed and started tuning in to these streams. Well, Garland Nixon is a great friend of mine, and I go on his show 2 or 3 times a week. I knew Dr. Wilmer Leon before I knew Garland Nixon. I met Dr. Wilmer Leon in Iran, in the Islamic Republic of Iran, because we were invited to the New Horizon Conference. There were I went to 2 different New Horizon conferences. The second one that I went to, which was actually the 3rd New Horizon Conference. I didn't go to the first one, but I went to the second and then the 3rd New Horizon Conference. So the 3rd New Horizon Conference was a conference in Iran themed around the Black liberation struggle. And I was invited because I was working with Press TV, the TV network at that time. I had been to a previous New Horizon conference. Then I went on the humanitarian mission to deliver medical aid to Yemen. And then after that, I was invited to the next New Horizon conference in Iran. And Dr. Wilmer Leon was there because he had a radio program that was nationally syndicated, aimed at Black Americans. And he is pro-Palestine and anti-Israel. He's done many broadcasts with Palestinian resistance forces and others. And so the Iranians, they like him. They think he's a pretty good guy. He's friendly with the Nation of Islam. He's friendly with a lot of Black liberation organizations. So they invited him and they took him to the conference in Iran. And we got to talk in the conference, got to know each other pretty well, got to hang out. And he started inviting me on his radio show on Sirius XM, Urban View. Right. He's a political science professor in Virginia, and he has a radio show on Sirius XM Urban View. Then he got hired by Sputnik Radio. So he now has a show on Sputnik Radio. So I went on it. Now, Garland Nixon, he was on Sputnik Radio. He used to be on Fox News Radio. He's also on Pacifica Radio. But he was on a morning show on Sputnik with my other friend, Lee Stranahan. And they started changing the thing. So long story short, Garland Nixon and Dr. Wilmer Leon, they gave them a show together called The Critical Hour. And that's a great show. And they do it every day, 5 days a week. They do The Critical Hour. And I absolutely love going on The Critical Hour. It's a great show. Anti-imperialist politics, Marxist economics. It's a great show. So I love going on there. And Garland Nixon is a good friend of mine. And he's spoken at a number of CPI events. Great guy, overwhelmingly. And, and he did stand with the CPI when we got our vicious attack. He knew it was coming. And he told me, he said, this is what they got. He said, but they can only play this card against you once, Caleb. After this, it's going to be old news. And that's the thing. It is old news now. You know what I mean? And my private life is no one's goddamn business. And what I do with consenting adults is no one's goddamn business. That's between me and my wife. And it's no one else's goddamn business. And it was low and petty of these people to bring up private things that really, are nobody else's goddamn business. And Garland Nixon saw this and he said, this is stupid and I'm not interested. And everyone who had common sense said the same thing. This is stupid. I'm not interested. This is designed to embarrass and humiliate somebody. This is, we all have private aspects of our life that don't deserve to be touched on. And the way that this was brought up was vicious. And Garland Nixon, he saw what they were doing, and he saw that this was just, some evil people were sitting there and thinking, what can we hit Caleb with that will really do psychological damage? What can we throw out there? What private information can we get out there to, and it was just really a vicious, nasty thing. And everyone who matters saw it for what it was, and the people who didn't see it that way can go to hell, right? As far as I'm concerned, you know what I mean? And Garland is one of the real ones. He's a real friend. He's a real ally. I love Garland Nixon. He's a great guy. All righty. I'm proud and impressed that you didn't let them keep you down. Join CPI today. Well, thank you. And absolutely. Our membership, we're at 109 members. I think 110 members as of yesterday. Somebody joined yesterday. So we're at 110 members around the country. Go ahead and sign up. More members is always better. You can always listen to the morning messages, right? Every morning we have our morning messages. So go to the CPI YouTube channel and go click on the morning messages, because we have morning messages every single day. I got to upload the one for tomorrow before I go to bed here tonight, but I will, no problem. And every single day we have morning messages. Start your day. When the first thing you do in the morning, when you wake up, listen to this. I'm guaranteeing you it'll make your life better. If you start out every morning by tuning in to the CPI YouTube channel and listen to our morning message. We have had many different members do them. We have members from all different walks of life, and you'll see how diverse our membership is. We've got men, we've got women, we've got white people, we've got black people, we've got young people, we've got old people, we've got, Latino folks, we've got, people of Middle Eastern descent. We've got old people, young people, Midwestern people, Southern people, people who live in urban areas, people who live in rural areas. I mean, you will see how amazingly diverse. We are bringing together Americans of all different backgrounds, and we don't fetishize anyone because of their background. We don't, try to tokenize anybody. And that's one thing we've been appreciated for. We're not doing that, leftist game where it's a group of wealthy white people who want to show everyone that they're the leader of the Black Revolution. We're not the leader of the Black Revolution. We are a very diverse group with people of many different backgrounds, and many different messages are given. And people bring their own perspective. We have folks from different generations. We have folks, who like different things. And it's just really beautiful what we do. Yes, there are Asians. We do have Asians in CPI. No worries. Many Asian Americans, actually. We're not tokenizing anybody, right? We value our members. We empower our members. We highlight them and we encourage them. And the main thing, if you're in CPI, we're looking for people who want to do stuff. Right. And one of the things you can do is make a morning message. Right. And we even open it up to friends. Friends can do it. If you're not a member of CPI, like Nick Brana is not a member of CPI, but he made a morning message. Good for him. Right. We're all about empowering people and giving people opportunities. So many of these groups are just one or two people's ego trip, just one or two people's ego trip. Certain people hog the spotlight all the time. That's not CPI. Right. I might do a lot, but that's because somebody's got to do it. And CPI is my brainchild. I mean, I thought of it. I've worked hard on it, but I am all about giving other people. I'm working with Noah on a book that he's working on. Great book Noah is working on. I am working with Elizabeth Young, our president, on a book as well. And we're all about empowering other people, pushing other people forward. So if you want to make a morning message, make one. Start your day with revolutionary hope and optimism. There you go. All righty, folks. All right. The most important Marxist materialist living in the USA. Me. Right? I'm joking, of course, right? That would be egotistical. But I mean, what do you want me to say, Jason? Jason, you often ask me questions that are intended to stump me or intended to, I will answer super chat questions, but you're asking the most important Marxist materialist. I mean, Michael Parenti is still alive. He's living. He's a Marxist materialist. His book, God and His Demons, emphasizes that he doesn't know if God exists or not, but he considers religion to be a negative force. So if that's materialism, I like a lot of Michael Parenti's stuff. Don't particularly like that book, but I like a lot of Michael Parenti's work. I mean, there you go. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a pure materialist, I guess. So I guess I can't include myself there. I don't know. I mean, there are a number of writers in the United States that I enjoy their output. There's a number of different speakers that I get a lot from. So I don't know what you want me to say there, Jason, but hope that answers your question. There you go. There you go. All righty. The Christian monument in Tiananmen Square. Yeah, it is a monument to the many different, it's called the Monument for the People's Heroes, right? It's Monument to People's Heroes. Here, I'll put it on the screen once again, since we talked about it earlier. Monument to People's Heroes. Monument to People's Heroes. And it is to 8 different revolutionary uprisings in Chinese history. It is to the destruction of opium at Humen, which was the beginning of the Opium War. It's when the Chinese government destroyed the opium. It's to the Jintin Uprising, the catalyst for the Taiping Rebellion. It's to the Wuchang Uprising, that was the catalyst for the Xinhua Revolution, the May 4th Movement, the May 30th Movement, the Nanqing Uprising, the War of Resistance against Japan, and the Yangtze River crossing campaign of the Chinese Civil War. That is what the monument to the People's Heroes commemorates. And number 2, the Jintin Uprising, is the catalyst for the Taiping Rebellion, the Taiping Uprising, and that was indeed a Christian revolt of Chinese Christians rallying around a guy who thought he was Jesus' younger brother, trying to build God's kingdom on earth. And that's something that they will not tell you on Fox News, is that one of the first things that Mao did when he came to power is build a statue in honor of a bunch of Christians. So there you go. There you go. All righty. All righty. Next question. Thank you, Caleb, for not canceling the conference. Well, I didn't even think about canceling the conference, John. Didn't even occur to me. I was in Illinois already. Was I going to drive back to New York without a conference? I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about it, John. Never crossed my mind. When the guy said to me, "You're going to cancel the conference, right?" I'm just like, no. You know what I'm saying? I will say it made it a lot more stressful for me to do the conference. And if you watch the video that I did, or the speech that I gave about the storm is going to come, I was more stressed out than I usually am. Right? I will admit that. I was quite stressed out during the Chicago conference. And that's why I consider it to have been a test. You know, sometimes they put you through difficult things, right? Sometimes the world puts you through difficult things, but that toughens you up. It shows you what you're capable of, and it enables you to do things more effectively next time around. Now I know that even under great stress, I can do what I did in Chicago last year. So, you know, I'm happy about that. Yeah, you know, that's all I can say. You know, what more do you want me to say? You know, I was not even thinking about canceling the conference, John. Never occurred to me. Never even occurred to me to cancel the conference. So there we go. Epic opening remarks. Proud to be a member of CPI. Well, we're proud to have you, Kieran. You're a beloved member of our organization. And, you know, glad you were with us in Missouri. Glad you were with us at the NYC events recently. You're right back at you, brother. We're with you. Stay strong. A favorite genre of books besides politics? Well, I don't read fiction, right? I'll just be honest. I don't read fiction. I just don't. For some reason, fiction and me do not compute. I'll show you the book I'm reading right now. Actually, I'll show you the non-political book that I'm reading right now. 1 second, right? I've been reading this book. For a little while. I've wanted to read this book for a long time. Excuse me here. Just got to get back up against the bookshelf here. I've been reading this book for a long time. I've been wanting to read this book for a long time, and I finally got around to it. It's called Do You Want It Good or Tuesday? And it's the memoir of Jimmy Sangster, who is the screenwriter who wrote all of my favorite horror movies. He wrote the Hammer horror films of the 1960s and 70s that were made by Hammer Film Productions. You know, I love those movies. I have watched them all, you know, Brides of Dracula and Dracula's Risen from the Grave and Curse of Frankenstein, Revenge of Frankenstein, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, which is an amazing film, by the way. Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed is just like an epic film. You want a portrait of a relentless sociopath. I mean, that is Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. That is an amazing film. And I love the movie Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed so much that the title of my book, I put out this compilation of my writings from my earlier years. I got the title Capitalism Must Be Destroyed from that movie. And I talk about that in the introduction because I absolutely love Jimmy Sangster. And so I love the movies that he made. So I actually wanted to read his autobiography. So I finally just got around to it. And Jimmy Sangster, fascinating guy, This is not a political book at all. This is about a guy who wrote horror movies. But it's very interesting because it shows you the inside of what the film industry back in those days, in the 60s and 70s, was about. And it shows you how, like he would write a movie and they would completely change it. And, it's very interesting. It's very amusing. I'm learning a lot from reading this book, but not about politics. This is all about Hollywood. This is all about writing horror movies and stuff. And I've loved Jimmy Sangster's films that he wrote for many years. So now I'm reading the book, Do You Want It Good or Tuesday by Jimmy Sangster, the memoir of one of my favorite screenwriters. So there you go. I hope that answers your question, Robert. That's the non-political book I'm reading right now. And I'd recommend you do that, right? If there's a certain type of movie you really like, read the biography or the memoir of the person who wrote it. You can learn a lot about yourself by what movies and books you like, right? You can learn a huge amount about yourself that way. And for example, I'm learning about myself by learning about Jimmy Sangster. No one ever told me I had to like those movies when I was a kid. I didn't like them for some political reason. I just got my hands on some Hammer films, right? Some of these British horror films from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, low budget British horror films. I liked them, right? I just liked them. Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, beautiful scantily clad women, but not overtly sexual, not overtly violent. There's a modern level of gore, a modern level of sex, but it's not like modern movies, right? It's not Saw, right? It's not a slasher film, right? I mean, the slasher genre I've always been disturbed by. I mean, it's still got a story. It's still got a plot. The good guy still wins. The bad guy still loses. And it takes place in the 1800s. So you have kind of a gothic theme. I like that. The Frankenstein movies, I like them. I just like them. Well, I'm reading Jimmy Sangster and I'm learning about why they did certain things in the film. And I'm learning about myself because I'm learning why I liked certain things. I learned things about these films I never even thought of, right? I just watched them. I didn't know about how they were made or anything. And so by reading Jimmy Sangster about how he wrote these movies that I really liked when I was a teenager, I'm learning about my own mind. You can do that, right? If you really like Harry Potter, go read a biography of J.K. Rowling and you will learn about yourself, right? If you really like, if you really like Sylvester Stallone movies, go read a biography of Sylvester Stallone. You will learn something about yourself, right? That often what we like in art contains a lot of subconscious elements of ourselves that we're not aware of. People like certain films, people like certain books, certain plays, certain songs for a variety of reasons. It speaks to them not just on a conscious level, but on a subconscious level. And in fact, I would argue that, the worst kind of liking something is when people are supposed to like something, right? When people are supposed to like something, when they're like, well, I'm a communist, so I'm supposed to like this movie. Please. I will tell you, there's a movie that all communists love that is politically 100% correct. And it's actually related to a couple of the questions that are coming later, that a lot of people love. And I agree with it as a movie. I don't like it. I do not like it. And that movie is The Wind That Shakes the Barley. I have only ever watched that movie once, and I felt like shit after I watched it. Was it politically correct? Absolutely. It was 100% correct, but I felt like shit after watching that movie. And that movie won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. That movie Politically, it's about the betrayal of the Irish freedom struggle and the creation and the Irish Civil War, and how the Irish freedom struggle was sold out. You know, and I don't disagree with anything in the movie. There's nothing in the movie I disagree with, but it made me feel like shit. It is a depressing, pessimistic Trotskyite movie. And then I saw another movie that it's made by this British Trotskyite film director. His name is escaping me right now. He made another movie called Land and Freedom. And I watched that movie, and I don't agree with that movie politically. It's about the Spanish Civil War, but I noticed it had the exact same storyline, the exact same themes, and that the reason that movie won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, is communist movie by a communist film director, is because it makes you feel like shit. You don't walk out of the theater feeling pumped up with revolutionary energy. You don't, right? You watch Wind That Shakes the Barley, it's sad. It's horrible. You end up feeling like garbage, right? I mean, it's true. It's all true. The Irish freedom struggle was sold out. It was betrayed, right? And it, you know, you want to talk about social democracy and social fascists, right? You know, I mean, it was totally betrayed. The Irish freedom struggle was absolutely betrayed. And nothing in the film is wrong, but the way it's portrayed, the graphic violence, the people turning against each other, the executions, it's just a very dark and unpleasant film. You know, and I don't like it. And that I can understand why the guy who made it is a Trotskyite. I can understand that, because that's how Trotskyites see the world. The Soviet Union was just the revolution betrayed. It was all just a betrayal. You know, it started out good, but then Stalin betrayed it. You know, and that's how they interpret the events of the 20th century, right? And I mean, it fits exactly. You know, it fits 100%. And I'm actually going to play a song about that here in a second that it just reminded me of. Again, we're on a music kick, right? As long as we don't play music that's going to get us in trouble. If we play somebody, you know, recording someone's version of it from their own YouTube channel, not like an official recording, we can generally get away with playing things. But you know, I mean, it's 100% correct. The Irish freedom struggle was absolutely betrayed, 100%. You know, but the way that it's portrayed, the graphic violence, the execution. At one point, they kill a kid in the movie. I mean, it's just so sad that this kid, you know, has been, you know, giving information to the British, and he doesn't exactly know, and they have to execute a child, and it's just like the whole movie, you know, from the torture scenes and the way it gets portrayed, it just leaves you feeling like shit. And I'm convinced that's why the French ruling class gave it the Palme d'Or. It may be a communist movie, but it leaves you feeling pessimistic. It leaves you feeling like garbage. You know, so they have no problem with it. You know, and that's, you know, and there's probably people in the chat who disagree with me about that. They probably people in the chat who like it as a movie, and I respect your right to disagree with me. But like, I have come to this movement to communism because I'm an optimist, because I want to have hope. And like the movie V for Vendetta, I compare the two movies. Both of them are leftist films. V for Vendetta politically is not correct, right? It's an anarchist left adventurist film. It's about individualism. It's almost Blanquism. It focuses on the state. Its political line is way more incorrect than Wind That Shakes the Barley. But I like it more because it strikes me on a subconscious level. It gives me that hope and that energy that I'm turning to revolutionary politics from. V for Vendetta. So, you know, another movie that I really like, that I've always really liked, one of my favorite movies is, it's not a communist movie. It's an anti-McCarthyism movie more than anything. And that's The Majestic. And again, that movie's about Rooseveltism, and it's about opposing McCarthyism. It's about the World War II coalition. It's very beautiful. Jim Carrey made it, and it's not a silly movie. Usually Jim Carrey is making funny faces or whatever. It's a great movie, right? And you know, we've shown these movies at CPI retreats before, because I think that what we're doing is not just a political thing. It's an aesthetic thing. We are bringing back an aesthetic. The aesthetic that you get from V for Vendetta, the aesthetic that you get from The Majestic. That's what we're going for that kind of revolutionary beauty. That's what we're trying to achieve. There's a kind of revolutionary beauty that we are trying to achieve. So since we're talking about the Irish freedom struggle being betrayed, put on a classic. This is Take It Down from the Mast
Take it down from the mast, Joanne Warman. It's a wide socialist way. It could never belong to you anymore. You brought on it nothing but shame. A late cut to those who are willing to end your illegal war. The ones who will get rid of driving, the ones who will bring back what's more. For we stand by James Key and Harry, by Maxton and Great John McLean. We are Labour for Scottish independence. We don't need your folks again. Take it down from the mast, Joanne Warman. It's the flag we socialist claim. It can never belong to you anymore. You brought on it nothing but shame. When you go, take Margaret Cullen with you. Jackie Bailey and Davidson as well. And don't leave behind Jenny Murphy. We don't need no Labour friends of Israel. Take it down from the mast, Joanne Warman. Why we socialist claim it can never belong to you anymore. You brought on it for shame.
Actually, so that was somebody who did a new version. That was something about Irish, like opposing New Labour and stuff like that. But actually, I think here's a version that's probably the original lyrics. Take It Down from the Mast by Declan Bahan, right? It's a song, you know, it's Take It Down from the Mast, Irish Traitors. That's a flag we Republicans claim. It'll never belong to Free Staters, for you brought on it nothing but shame. Let me see if this version is more true to the original. That was somebody singing about socialists and New Labour and stuff. Here we go. Let's see if this version is better.
Take it down from the mast, Irish traitor. It's the flag we Republicans claim. It can never belong to Free Staters. Oh, you brought on it nothing but shame. Why not leave in those who are willing to uphold it in war and in peace? To the men who intend to do the killing until England's tyranny cease. Take it down from the mast, Irish traitor. It's the flag we Republicans claim. It can never belong to Free Staters. Oh, you brought on it nothing but shame. So stand by Davy and Larkin, by provisionals and Southern Poll. We will break down the English connection and win back the nation we stole. Take it down from the mast, Irish traitor. It's the flag we Republicans claim. It can never belong to Free Staters. We brought on it nothing but shame. You sold out the 6 counties for your freedom, but we given you McCracken and Wolfe Tone, and the Ulstermen fought with you in Dublin. Now you watch while we fight all alone. Take it down from the mast, Irish traitor. It's the flag we Republicans claim. It can never belong to Free Staters. Oh, you brought on it nothing but shame. Up in Ulster we are fighting for freedom, for our people they yearn to be free. You execute those who fought for us with a high man from over the sea. Take it down from the mast, Irish trade has. It's the flag we Republicans claim. It can never belong to every state has. Oh, you brought out it nothing but shame. You have murdered brave Liam and Rory. You have slaughtered young Richard and Joe. With your hands their blood is still gory, fulfilling the work of the foe. To take it down from the mast Irish trade hands. It's the flag we Republicans claim. It can never belong to every state has. Oh, you brought on it nothing but shame. To take it down from the mast Irish trade has. It's the flag we Republicans claim. It can never belong to every state has. Oh, you brought on it nothing but shame.
All righty. Well, you couldn't really understand the words that guy was saying either, but yeah, you can look it up elsewhere. It's Take It Down from the Mast. It's a song by Declan Bahan about the selling out of the Irish freedom struggles, which brings me to the next question. If James Connolly were alive today, what would his perspective be? Well, the brilliance of James Connolly is, James Connolly lived in the United States for a while, and he was in the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World, the Wobblies. But he disagreed with them about the national question. The Wobblies, they said that only the workers against the bosses. There was no nationality. But James Connolly understood that the Irish people were fighting for their national liberation as a country. And because they were fighting for their national liberation as a country, the struggle for socialism and working class liberation was combined with the struggle of the Irish people against the British Empire. And James Connolly, what was interesting is he understood that for the Irish people, Catholicism was very important because the British had tried to force them not to be Catholic and had suppressed them and committed genocide against them, Oliver Cromwell and others, on the basis of their Catholicism. So it was important that the Irish freedom struggle not be anti-religious. So he came up with a policy called no religious test. And that actually draws from the American Constitution. And the U.S. Constitution says there is no religious test. There can be no religious test for whether or not you serve in the American government. And so James Connolly lifted the language of the U.S. Constitution, and he applied that to the Irish freedom movement. He said, no religious test, meaning you can be an atheist, you can be Catholic, you can be Protestant, Jewish, whatever you want, right? And that was very important. That was an aspect of James Connolly, and he understood that they couldn't oppose religion, but they shouldn't be building a religious movement, right? No religious test. They recruited a lot of Protestants. They recruited he was an atheist, a communist atheist, from what I understand. And then on top of that, they were fighting a national liberation struggle, and they combined the struggle for freedom from the British Empire with the struggle for socialism. They seized the General Post Office, and they were brutally executed. And the nature with which they executed all the leaders of the Easter Uprising in 1916, it was so horrendous that it sparked a huge wave of interest in Irish national liberation, which is interesting. It kind of backfired, right? That the British Empire crushed the rebellion so viciously, that it inspired a wave of resistance. And that's an aspect of, what happened that many people take inspiration from. They didn't have as much support among the population. The population wasn't as inspired to fight against the British until they saw the utter brutality that the British Empire waged against them. That's particularly fascinating. I think James Connolly, if he came back today, he would be angry about why there was a lack of class struggle rhetoric among people who call themselves socialists. He would not understand it. He would be perplexed because if you read everything that he wrote, I mean, it was all flowing with class consciousness, economics. He was interested in the economics of socialism, and that he came to many of the same conclusions that Lenin came to about the national question, about how to organize and build a revolutionary organization. He came to very similar conclusions that Lenin came to, separate from Lenin. And that shows that this is a science. It's not, mystical divination. He was trying to organize a national liberation struggle, and he was a socialist. And so he developed methods that were very similar to the Bolshevik methods that were developed. And I would argue William Z. Foster in the United States came to very similar conclusions as well. If you look at what the Syndicalist League of North America was doing. And it shows that at that time in history, that was the way to get things done. And that a number of organizations around the world started functioning in ways that, were pioneered or were similar to what the Bolsheviks were doing because these methods were working. The Syndicalist League of North America, they called themselves the militant minority. They would join the existing labor unions, but function as like a radical caucus within it. That was boring from within, the building of a militant minority within a labor union. Combining the struggle for national liberation with the struggle for socialism, with the working class, leading a united front of all, classes to free an entire nation. That's what James Connolly did in Ireland. I think James Connolly would understand why it was important to support the Uhuru movement. And he would be frustrated by the fact that the Uhuru movement was not getting the support, because he would understand that, when you have an oppressed nation fighting for its national liberation, that's very important. And the Black people of America, they're fighting as an oppressed people. There are murals of Mumia Abu-Jamal in Northern Ireland in Catholic neighborhoods. I bet you didn't know that, but there are. And there are murals of Nelson Mandela, and that's a very important thing. So there you go. Those are just some of my thoughts. I don't know this song. Connolly was there. I don't know this one, John McCarthy. I'll have to go listen to it. But maybe I'll play it on a future stream. But there you go. Are there any World War II veterans who were actually communist? Of course. Of course. What kind of question is that? Every member of the Communist Party USA that was of military age and male had to enlist. Every single one. Gus Hall was in World War II and fought in World War II. Every single Communist Party member that was of military age had to join. And in fact, one of the big speeches against Earl Browder and revisionism is speech to the veterans, is William Z. Foster speaking to the veterans. It's when all the Communist Party members came back from World War II, they had to give them orientation about why Earl Browder had dissolved the party while they were gone. There were many, many communist World War II veterans. Many, many of them. I mean, not just a few. There were many of them, right? Here's William Z. Foster's speech to the veterans, on the struggle against revisionism. This is the speech to the veterans. I believe, this is it. This is it right here. Is this the one or is it? Yeah. Is it this one? Yeah, I'm trying to find the speech to the veterans that he gave on revisionism. But yeah, one of the main speeches against Browderism was called the speech to the veterans. I think it's the struggle against revisionism. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, prepared by the National Veterans Committee of the Communist Party. And this was when the Communist Party members, all the Communist Party members who came back from World War II, they had to get oriented about why Earl Browder had dissolved the party. And so here you go, Red Star Publishers. There's the link to Speech to the Veterans. It's called On the Struggle Against Revisionism, prepared by the National Veterans Committee of the Communist Party for free distribution to communist ex-servicemen from World War II. There was actually a communist, there was one of the guys who was convicted in the Smith Act trial of 1948. was given a lesser sentence because of his heroism. His heroism in the Second World War. Let me pull that up. Let me pull up which one it was. Okay. Which one was it? One of them got a lesser sentence because of his heroism during the war. All right. Which one was it? I'm trying to find here on the Wikipedia page, but yeah, it was one of the communists who was convicted at the trial. Got a lesser sentence. The judge gave him a lesser sentence because of his heroism in the war. But who was it? Right. Who was it? The judge sentenced 10 of the defendants to 5 years and a $10,000 fine each. The 11th defendant, Robert G. Thompson, a veteran of World War II, was sentenced to 3 years in consideration for his wartime service. Robert G. Thompson, who was a leader of the Communist Party, who was convicted for being a communist under the Smith Act. Robert G. Thompson, he got only a 3-year sentence because of his heroism in the war. And you can read about his, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross by the United States. There you go. Read his Wikipedia page, Robert G. Thompson. There you go. This was the guy who got a shorter sentence at the Smith Act. He was convicted in 1948 for being a communist, and they gave him a shorter prison sentence because of his heroism during World War II. But I will also mention the one communist World War II veteran that I have met. I haven't met many because, by the time I'm World War II veterans were dying off. My grandparents were World War II veterans, but, my grandfather died in my freshman year of college. My grandmother died in 2012. My other grandmother died. My other grandfather died my senior year of high school, and they were all World War II veterans, but they were all dying. At Occupy Wall Street, there was a very old man, a very, very, very old man who came, and he would wear his Union jacket. I forget which Union it was. And he would wear his veteran's hat. Right? They have those black hats that have like the name of the battleship you served on. And they have the name of the battleship that you served on. And his hat said World War II veteran. It said World War II veteran on his hat. He was a very old man, and he came and he had photocopies of this book, Labor's Untold Story. Do I have Labor's Untold Story? Yes. Where is it? Labor's Untold Story. He had photocopies of it. Yeah, here it is. Of this book, Labor's Untold Story, which is a story about, it's a history of the labor movement in the United States, published by United Electrical Workers. And he had photocopies of this book that he had run off, I don't know, at the senior center or the public library. And he was there in his World War II veteran's hat, just handing out photocopies of pages from this book to young activists at Occupy Wall Street. It was one of the most touching things I'd ever seen in my life. And he was wearing his World War II veteran's hat. And he was wearing that to make a statement because he'd been through McCarthyism, and the witch hunts and everything. And he was there, hunched over, old CPUSA, Communist Party USA member. He was wearing that hat to say, don't call me un-American. Don't say I'm unpatriotic. I fought in World War II. I helped defeat the Nazis. That's what he was saying. And he had photocopies of this book, a couple pages from this book, and he was handing it out to people. It was one of the sweetest things I've ever seen. And that goes to show you that there's a continuity to what we're doing. We are keeping something alive that is so much bigger than us. It's so much bigger than any generation. It's that feeling I get when I play that recording of the Internationale from China, where they have the guy playing it in French at the beginning, and then it goes to the woman playing it in Chinese. It's that feeling I get because, this is We are keeping a flame of liberation burning that has gone on for so many generations. And we just keep marching ahead. So you asked me, are there any World War II veterans who were actually communists? Yes, there were. There were quite a few, actually. Quite a few of them. Quite a few of them. I think there was an American Nazi leader, George Lincoln Rockwell. Apparently he used to, one of his jokes that he would tell when people were booing him or heckling him, he would say, "Oh, you guys like me just as much as the Jewish war veterans." Right? Well, apparently there was a group called the Jewish War Veterans in New York City. A lot of them were communists, and they hated George Lincoln Rockwell because he was a Nazi, and they'd fought Nazis in World War II, and they were Jewish. And this was a group that they would go out and beat up George Lincoln Rockwell. Every time he was trying to give a speech, he'd be giving a speech, and they would try to beat him up, the Jewish war veterans. So George Lincoln Rockwell used to make jokes about the Jewish war veterans, So there you go. There you go. Yeah. Well, listen, Felonious, I'm really glad I inspire you. I'm doing the best that I can. We're still here. We are still here. We will not surrender. We will never surrender. CPI is marching ahead. We will not back down. We will not surrender. And pretty soon we're going to be having our national convention in Portland, Oregon. The location will be announced soon. So stay strong, everybody. And, it's late. It's almost 2 a.m. That's okay. I'm glad you guys kept me going. I'm going to put on the closing music now, and I'll probably be back tomorrow night. Don't know why I wouldn't be. So, everybody. All right. Put on the closing music, and away we go. And away we go. Upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.